2 days of herb gathering. Hello? Oh. What's up, gang? We're leveling herbalism as ass. I did that shit all day yesterday. I can barely remember yesterday, and it's still ass. Only level 214. Working on collecting flowers. Working on trying to get 300 herbalism so I can go back to the Outlands and be able to pick shit up there. And when we do dungeons and stuff, be able to pick shit up in the dungeons too. It's just fucking ass, dude. Like, according to the guide, these are the 2 best places for the level range I'm at now. And it's so spread out. It's so annoying. Skinning, I feel like, was when I played hardcore and I did skinning. I feel like skinning was one of the easier ones to level up because you just level it up. You start at level 1, and you just level it up as you go. And by the time you, like max out for that level, like you still got some grinding to do to get to the next level of mobs that would drop the new stuff, you know? Why did that dismount me? Why did jumping on this dismount me? That's annoying. Yeah, but you're doing good if you're 240. Hey, that's not much of a gap to fill in. You probably do some questing and shit in Outlands and get some gold. And then buy your way to 300. There's a bunch of recipes in the 3rd tab of the bank. Have you looked? What are these named dragons doing here? I just want that shit over there. I want that flower. Oh wait. Oh my god, it's immune to fear. Coonhem's over there doing nothing for me. Hey, that's not nice. Oh, now you come over here. Now you come over here after I already killed it. Arak Kronos. Anna Kronos. What the fuck? Who the fuck are you? That guy that just walked by, I've seen him before. I have 2 kills on him. 2 wins, 0 losses. It's a bot. Doing smushers. What is that place? Like an old dwarven keep or something? Well, the markings don't really look dwarven. So desert folk. Can you still do stickers without stream stickers that contribute for hovering over the live view and looking for the hard icon? I think I removed the stream stickers extension, didn't I? Can you still see the stream stickers extension when you hover over the window? Because yeah, I removed stream stickers to be able to put the leaderboard so you can see the all-time leaderboard. So you can only have like 3 extensions like that for some reason. It was revealed following the, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep, that's what I've been doing. Just running from node to node. Yup. We're almost done with this area, though. Six more flowers, and I can leave this godforsaken wasteland. Damn, it's cold. I'm gonna turn off the AC and just turn it on fan. So if the camera blacks out, it's because it overheated. I'm sorry. Oh shit. yeah, for some reason, I don't know. Just turn it on fan for now. I swear I set it to 20 yesterday and it's on 17 right now. Cold as fuck. But I just switched it to just fan. So if the, wait, there's a fucking auctioneer here? What? Since when was there an auctioneer here? Auctioneer Beardo? No, that's wrong. Bro, there's been a fucking auction here the whole time? Oh my god, dude. Do you know how many times I went to fucking Ogremar? You know how many times I went to fucking Ogremar because it's different than Horde? Oh, what do they got over here, huh? Nothing. Nothing. Yeah, I didn't know there was an auctioneer here either. It just showed up on my map. Weird. Oh, look, there's a Staff of Jordan. Tiny Crimson Whelpling for 263. Wild. Hello! Yo, what is this? Orb of Deception. Transform caster to look like a member of the opposing faction. What? That shit don't matter. They just buy gold off G2G if they want gold. Conjure a lily root that restores health and mana when eaten. What? There's so much weird shit on here. Bro, I'm not gonna look at your fucking... Get your fucking slippery, slappy ass snake tongue out of my chat with those fucking Kickstarter fucking word bullshits. Fuck you. I'm traumatized. I have PTSD. Alright? It's not cool. Has all the buzzwords. Fuck you. I don't want it. Bro, I feel like there's gonna be so many copycat scams now that Steven, like, has almost gotten away with it, you know? And I would have gotten away with it, too, if it weren't for the meddling streamers. I didn't know you could, you could make, like, a neighborhood with the WoW housing system in Midnight. What is like max level in Midnight? Like fucking 368? More an ARPG. Remind me what an ARPG is. Action role-playing game. Yeah, see, I don't like that. I want a game where we have to work together. Maybe not even that we have to work together, but that we're rewarded for working together. Yeah, it'll probably, the midnight hype will wear down and people will go back to where they're comfortable after a while. Some people will go back to hardcore classic, some people will go back to, PBC anniversary. You know, people will spread back out into their favorite modes of the game. Versions, if you will. Bro, is Rift still a thing? It is. What the fuck? Do you guys remember housing and Rift? I had a lot of fun with housing in Rift. Rift is back.
If you have never played Rift and you struggle...
I liked Rift. The reason I quit playing was because there was too many pay-to-win mechanics in there. Dark and darker MMORPG. I think our current Obi-Wan Kenobi is the Riot MMO, right?
I tried to cover the beginning of the game step by step in this guide. So just let's go. First, you have the character creation. In the character creation you get asked which faction you want to choose. There are the Guardians and there are the Defiants. The Guardians, they are very faithful and loyal to the gods. The Defiants, on the other hand, they are technology driven and both factions don't like each other. Actually, they hate each other, but you will learn that while playing the game. It is really important to note that you can play all content together, even in the late game. Only the capital cities and the starting areas for both factions are different. So even in our guild, it's basically 50-50. Choose whatever you like most. Same goes for the races. Each race provides a minor race bonus or skill, but they are not really game breaking. Which races you can choose depends on the faction that you chose. For the Defiants, you have Eth, Kelari and Bami. And for the Guardians you have more classic choices like Mathosians, which are basically humans, High Elves and Dwarves. All races can be either male or female. And there are no upsides or downsides of either one. Now let's get to the classes. The class menu looks a little overwhelming at first. It is important to understand that in Rift you can choose a class, but within this class there are several souls. The combination of your souls and the skill points you put into each determine your playstyle and your role.
Rogue Tank was fun and interesting when Rift first came out.
I would highly suggest looking at the roles marked in red and avoid these classes if you want to play that red role. You can find at least one free class for each role. These roles can later be purchased in-game. Other than that, feel free to experiment with your builds in-game and pick whatever you like. It is really hard to compare the playstyle of the classes in Rift with other MMOs because it's less traditional. You can play Mage or Rogue Tank, you can play Cleric DPS, and you even can play Warrior Healer. And this is one thing that really makes Rift stand out. In the next step you can choose a purpose. But that is basically covered with what I said before. The purposes are predefined soul specs to make it easier for newcomers. So if you level up, your soul points are spent depending on your purpose. So if you want to keep it easy, just stick with the purpose and start experimenting later in the game if you feel comfortable. As in most other MMOs, it is usually easier to level as a DPS because it is much faster.
Soul
but this
points.
is not mandatory. Now gameplay wise your character is finished. In the next step you can choose a name and customize your appearance and then you are ready to go. You will now start in the tutorial area of the game. Both factions have different tutorials. In this tutorial the game teaches you the very basics, so movement, combat, skills, etc. So just follow it and take your time. Just in case you have never played an MMO, here are a few tips. If you press C, you can see your character and your character's gear. If you press B, you can open your backpack. Dead opponents can be looted by right-clicking, and on the minimap and on the map you always see your quest objective. When pressing P, you can see all your skills, and when pressing N, you can see your souls and your skill points that are spent into these souls. So I think with these tips you can easily get through the tutorial, even if you have never played an MMO before. At around level 6 you should be done with the tutorial and start in the open world. As a Guardian you will start in Silverwood, and as a Defiant you will start in Freemarch. Both are located in the middle of the first continent. And basically the north of the map is Guardian territory and the south of the map is Defiant territory. but you can travel across the enemy territory as well. So now, after the tutorial, the game opens up and becomes less streamlined. So here are a few guidelines for your further progress. If you have never played Rift before, I would highly suggest leveling in the open world. There are quests provided by NPCs and kill quests that are triggered by killing certain mobs. The mobs that trigger a kill quest have a golden symbol next to their name. Playing and questing in the open world will introduce you to the lore and to your character at a very healthy pace. But before you leave the first hub, here are a few essentials. First, always talk to the Particulum NPCs. This unlocks the Particulum and makes roaming the game world a lot easier and faster. You can also bind your character's soul to a Particulum for your soul recall. This is a skill and it has a 1 hour cooldown. It can teleport you from anywhere in the game world to your soulbound location. So if you're out questing, it is highly recommended to play around this cooldown to save a little bit of traveling time. Second, the general goods NPC are NPCs that sell health potions, bags and drinks to you. I would recommend getting bags from the auction house or from your guild because they are way cheaper and bigger. Potions can be used in combat, while drinks are more powerful but can only be used out of combat. This is very similar to classic World of Warcraft. And third, at the mailbox you can send goods and messages to other players even if they are not online. But probably you won't need that at the start, just in case you wonder why there is a mailbox. And now that you start questing in the open world, there are several sources for experience. First, discovering areas, second, kill experience, and third, quests. If you have an active subscription, one of your perks will be bonus experience, so you will level faster if you are subscribed. But I personally am not subscribed at the moment. It's not mandatory at all to enjoy the game. If you want to join a guild fast, just press Shift G for the guild finder, and here you can browse for a guild that suits you. If you are playing on the shard Deepwood, which is a US server, then feel free to join the fresh Rift Walkers. We are very happy to welcome you. As you are doing your quests, you will also encounter rifts and maybe even invasions on your way to level 10. These are planner activities. They provide experience and on top you will receive important planner currency. Above all to mention is plannerite. This is a currency used at the vendor for planner goods. These NPCs are located in most bigger hubs of the game. You can buy gear and consumables for plannerite during your leveling, but it will be crucial in the late game. Once you hit level 10, you can queue up for instant adventures and intrepid adventures. These are random quests all around the map or in a raid. Your level will be adjusted to the zone and the quest you are currently in. This is really streamlined and leveling is...
I thought he was gonna tell me that, like, the population was up or something. That was boring. I read, like, what? The Boy Scouts are horrifying.
I don't feel good. But at least we have new merch.
I want some Papa Meat merch.
Welcome back to the Papa Meat channel. How you doing? How you doing? Coming in and sitting down because today we are going to be talking about Boy Scouts! Yes, sir! Hoorah! Yes, sir! The Scouting movement started all the way back in 1907 in England with the goal of creating good citizens and outdoor-savvy youth. Young Scouts could earn merit badges, hold leadership roles, and become valuable members in their communities. Thank you, Boy Scouts. I imagine at the beginning people were like, that's kind of cool.
I didn't know it was from Britain. I thought it was America.
The UK. My boys need to go out and fatty do something woods, huh? Aye, sir.
What the fuck?
Let me help you with your bags, ma'am. Also, can I whittle you a knife made of wood? The ultimate goal was to become an Eagle Scout, an award given to those who contribute to their communities through a service project. Fast forward to today, the Boy Scouts are a worldwide phenomenon.
Phenomenon.
Going relatively strong for the last, century or so. Relatively. Some people might say the Boy Scouts are not as cool as they used to be. No. They wouldn't know, though. It's relative. Many who have joined speak highly of their experience and encourage others to join so they can learn the valuable skills offered. Not everyone had the same experience and despised the Scouts with every fiber of their being. And for good reason, as you'll soon find out. Yeah, not going to be a positive video about the Boy Scouts.
What?
Clicked on the wrong channel. Giving preteens knives can be dangerous, and those on the outside judge heavily for joining. In recent years, the dark underbelly of scouting has come to light, as thousands of people who are sexually abused by their leaders have come
Of
forward
course.
with their stories leading to a lot of scouting drama. Kids coming forth and talking about their sexual abuse and stuff. All the guys are like, it's just trauma. This doesn't even include all the injuries and dangerous adventures that have occurred on troop outings. So put on your sashes and grab your compass as we navigate the crazy world of Boy Scouts. How much of this document is men raping boys?
Jesus Christ.
That does not answer. I mean, to be fair, you can't talk about the Boy Scouts without bringing up it's a problem. It's just drama, relative drama. Most people think that Scouts is just merit badges. and
Straight to the
campers.
point
That's what
with
they
Meat
think the Boy
Canyon.
Scouts are. But little
No
do they know,
filter.
it's also filled with cult-like ceremonies. You think that it's just going out and you pound around, maybe getting touched by your scout leader, or going out fishing. Easy. Do you hear the last thing I just said?
Well, I
You're getting touched by your scout leader, and Nick's immediately just like, my dad did that. Let's just hold on a second. Let me get to where I was going. Because people think that joining the Scouts is just peeling potatoes with knives, fucking making those stupid ass cars that you do the race cars stuff with it, or it's fishing. I was in the Boy Scouts for a small period of time, very small period of time. Even when I was a kid, I was just like,
Yeah, it wasn't very fun.
the fuck is this shit, dude? Really? What the fuck? It's like, because also all of it, almost every Boy Scout meeting we had was held in a church. It was very culty. It's a cult-like thing. Just odd.
Mine was held in my house, and then like one of the kids was humping my chair, my couch.
What the fuck, Nick? What is wrong with Nick?
That only a select few scouts are inducted into. To be selected as a candidate, you must camp at least 15 nights and have been in the organization for 2 years. Now here's the thing. That criteria is not crazy, okay? You have to camp 15 nights, whoa, and be in there 2 years? What do you think that tells you about the turnaround rate? It is a revolving door. I think I want to do this. Nope, just kidding. So those motherfuckers that last the 15 nights and are able to do it for 2 years, that's a boy I don't want to, but that's a boy I do not want to fuck with, all right? After those requirements are met, your peers then put you in as a candidate. The ceremony for inductees is insane and very theatrical. All of the scouts are brought to an open field or lake in a line with a massive campfire in the center. Does that feel, what does that also remind you? Like a satanic ritual? Does it remind you of some kind of fucking Ku Klux Klan? Doesn't it? We're gonna put on some spooky ghost outfit, guys. We're scouting. Ceremonial drums and chants can be heard in the distance as a man in a Native American headdress gives a speech. After the speech is over, 2 other Native Americans, are these real Native Americans are doing this shit? There's no
These are men dressed as natives.
Okay, so after the speech, 2 other men dressed as Native Americans begin running up and down the line, stopping at the candidates, and either yelling at them to run to the fire or yanking them out of line. Once all candidates are gone, true trial begins. For the next 24 hours, they are prohibited from talking or bathing and are only allowed to
Hell
eat
yeah.
very
That's
light
my kind of
rations.
shit.
They must sleep on the ground in the woods and do manual labor projects.
Gotta toughen them up.
I don't want to get too much into the graphic shit, but does this not read like you're supposed to strip you for clothes and you'll be they're weak from not eating, they're delirious, and you can't speak to anyone, can't yell, and you can't bathe, which is just a guy being like, make them stink, make them build up a sweat in the camp, they can't bathe, put that in there. If any of the scouts fail to adhere to these guidelines, they'll be instantly kicked and allowed to retry the following year if they are elected into this role again, which good luck, buddy. Otherwise, if they complete the trial, they are awarded a sash and a feast. After you become a member, there are tons of events where Order of the Arrow members gather. One of the biggest is the National Order of the Arrow Conference, where they rent out a massive stadium and treat it like a monster truck rally with pyrotechnics and explosions. This is Boy Scouts, by the way. You went out and you fished, you camped, and then I don't know what else happened, but this is what's you get rewarded. But to come in, you can't bathe, and you can't say a word to anyone. Let's go sell popcorn outside of a Walmart. Come on, but don't. Okay. Can I get my badge later? You got this, Lizzie. I don't trust these motherfuckers one bit. The Order of the Arrow is an organization-wide ceremony, which most people find to be an extraordinary experience. However, not all ceremonies are the same. One camper talked about how during their ceremony, the runners came by with a knife and cut all their hands with the same blade. There's an emphasis on the same blade. If I feel like somebody was infected or something, they cut Marcus and they cut me. That's why I look like this. He was then forced to do hard manual labor and was not allowed any food for over 24 hours. Can I get the fucking quota? That's what happens. Right? Isn't that what happens to everybody? Which getting cut up is not usually the same experience that, it's not the regular occurrence for 99% of the Order of the Arrow members and is seen as extreme. And sadly, it's not the only rigorous ceremony in scouting. Throughout the hundreds of summer camps, there are more local rituals only done at specific locations. So it's like, yeah, there are the ceremonies, it's this location, they do this, this is what they like. Can I come inside?
No.
I want one glizzy, please. This video is sponsored by Fume, the leaders in flavored air. Breaking bad habits can be hard. Maybe the stress of the holiday season is making that harder? Why don't you let Fume help with that? Fume is not a vape, it's not an e-cig, it's just flavored air, which means you can use Fume anywhere. With Fume, there's no vapor, no nicotine, and no toxic chemicals. And on top of that, Fume is an award-winning device that puts you on the path towards being free from bad habits. For my money, Fume's best flavors, crisp mint, but they have other great flavors like peach, blush, and grapefruit.
Okay. I was about to say, like, can I... Oh, 260,
I can
what the
take it
fuck?
anywhere or keep it here at my desk without it taking up any space. Fume is also there for when you're feeling anxious. Keep Fume by your side and find your calm with the satisfying clicks and snaps of the device, wherever and whenever you need to. Over 700,000 people have already made the switch to Fume as part of their habit-change journey. And for a limited time, if you order the Journey Pack using my code PAPAMEAT, you'll get a free Fume topper. So if you've been thinking about changing your habits, this is the perfect first step. Go to tryfume.com/PAPAMEAT or scan the QR code on screen to grab yours today. Thanks, Fume, for sponsoring the video. Back to the video. The Piper Stone ceremony at Camp Allenchen is another secretive ceremony that requires scouts to undergo multiple trials and tribulations, and at the end, the scouts are given a pipe stone to wear.
A little hieroglyphic.
A little, are we in Egypt? Of these who have endured the ceremony, many have reported extremely harsh conditions. One of the trials involved running through the woods by torchlight while wearing a loincloth and being yelled at. And if you fell behind, you'd be kicked up or picked up off the ground
Egyptian
and forced
flies.
to continue. Yeah! Go! Do not bathe! Many boys have reported being handled roughly, shoved, and kicked, which resulted in injuries and induced vomiting. And what made the experience even more traumatic was the fact that you were not allowed to speak about the abuse because we were all sworn to secrecy. I can't, or else the ghosts will attack me. That's what they told me. Others have reported being choked, punched, and forced to hug poison ivy trees and much worse. What? Despite all of this being well known, many deny its existence and say that the scouts are being soft. No legal action has ever been taken against the camp. The tradition carries on to this very day. And for over a century, the Boy Scouts remained, for the most part, drama-free. It wasn't until recently that one scout. In 2018, the Boy Scouts of America made a controversial decision to allow girls into the organization.
What?
Hey. What?
Boy and Girl Scouts.
But we're boys. It's Boy Scouts.
Gotta be gender inclusive.
Is that? Well, I don't think it's gonna be gender inclusive. I think they see that. The Girl Scouts making some fucking money, dude. The cookies.
The cookies?
Boy Scouts can't fucking sell cookies. They'd be like, you better step off our turf.
So, okay, hold on. Here's a question. Do Girl Scouts do anything besides sell cookies. Because it sounds like the Boy Scouts are like, that's like boys club. You go out and it's stinky and you're in the wilderness. And it seems like the girls just sell cookies because they're cute.
Why can't it? That's a good point. If there was a thing called the Cookie Scouts, it's like we just raise money for their, which I guess, do they raise money for the Girl Scouts? And if so, what are they spending money on? How do you think we fucking make these? We gotta have money to make these cookies.
They, it's only the organization, the Girl Scouts, make the money. Or like, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what they do. Do they go camping?
I don't know. I've never been in it. I've never thought about that conspiracy of how do we know that they don't just have a costume and they're just making like, it's a cookie business that well, it's child labor. And it's a cookie business where, yeah, people are like, it's the Scouts. You're going to be by this big oven. Take them out. Do we have mitts? Bare hands.
Bare hands.
The Boy Scouts should start selling cookies on their off-season.
The Boy Scouts need to do like, they need to sit outside and they need to grill. Do burgers.
Glizzy?
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, a hot dog stand would go hard, I feel like. Then the Girl Scouts immediately filed a trademark infringement lawsuit claiming that the terms scouts and scouting were wrongfully marketed to girls. This, they argued, confused both potential members and their parents about which organization to join. Which I'd be like, what the fuck what are you so confused for? Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts? I don't know. Which one is it? You know, I'd say I don't fucking care. Want cookies? Yeah. They voted out.
Get stinky?
Want to get stinky? Oh, yeah. You better believe it. I'm gonna roll around the mud. The Boy Scouts responded by saying their claims were utterly meritless and that all the new girl members were joining because they wanted to. Dubbed the recruitment war. Both organizations fought with each other to get new members while claiming that they are the rightful owners of the term scouting. This lasted for over 3 years until it was settled in court after all claims were dropped. The whole reason why the organization changed was because for not evolving and being a mostly white and anti-gay organization. All right, that's what the Boy Scouts, a little white boy, little Nazi club. That's what I mean. You know what I mean? Can I join? When they do comply with demands, tons of people and institutions call them out for being woke. No winning. All right, fine. Get on in here, gay kid. Yay! Woke! All right, get out. Aww. That's the same kid, just back and forth. It's not just the public that is abandoning the organization, but the Church of Latter-day Saints has also dropped its support. You know what I said earlier on? This fucking Mormon churches, that's all they were in. It's fucked up. For the majority of the existence, the Latter-day Saints Church has been the Boy Scouts' biggest donor and supplier of new scouts. Starting in 2013, when the Boy Scouts started being more friendly towards atheists and eventually allowed gays, Latter-day Saints Church loyalty was shaky. What are you having, boy? Why I don't know, we just want new people coming in. We need good boys in there. Bad boy. It wasn't until they allowed girls that the line had been crossed. Gays and atheists, people that are completely opposed to their beliefs, whatever, were like, I don't know. And it wasn't until just a girl came in, they're like, okay, what is this?
Now you're crossing lines.
Now you're crossing a line.
Why don't you just call it the Scouts?
What are you gonna do, have heterosexual sex?
What the
bored. There's still plenty of boys to have sex with. I know. This is so stupid. This not only caused the overall enrollment to drop significantly, but also severely worsened their already terrible finances and pushed the organization to near bankruptcy. Most recently, the Boy Scouts have escaped bankruptcy and have changed their name to Scouting America. This has led to another outrage, which people believe is the final coffin, with the phrase "go woke" or "go broke" being thrown around.
So the reason they changed their name was so they could be more inclusive. You can be a furry or a transgender or a female or a boy or whatever you want to be and come to and join the Boy Scouts.
Can't win. It's bound to end eventually. It's going to end. It's just such an outdated thing.
Oh, the Boy Scouts?
What could you possibly do to make it?
Gotta make them tech Boy Scouts, like tech bros.
You have to almost change it to where it's just like useful stuff. See, back in the day, it's like in the wild, in case you need to support your family. Now you need to have like kids come in and be like, you're gonna learn how to code. You're gonna be an AI engineer.
Now you gotta do doomsday prepping.
Oh, see, or you have two extremes. You either do, you want a job when you're out of college, we're gonna help you get there with AI, Imagineering or whatever. Or you go super the other direction. It's just like, God's gonna kill you. You should be afraid. And also, AI is gonna kill us. doomsday preppers. And then you get you have to attack the kids' parents.
Yeah.
And they force the kids to go. And you basically just keep the cycle going. You know what it's like, what it's gonna be like? It's gonna be hell on earth. You should be scared. Then they're scared all growing up, at least in their kids. There's a solution. You're welcome, Scouting America. Even with all the controversy, many scouts have a lot of insane stories to tell that often show all the good times they had while in scouts. Every scout has their stories, but some are more insane than others. Scouting is supposed to prepare young boys for life and the outdoors by teaching them necessary skills to survive. However, they can't always teach common sense. While out on patrol, an older scout returned to their campsite to find the rest of the troop making fried chicken. When he entered the camp, the entire area smelled like bleach.
Chicken.
And upon closer inspection, he was horrified to learn that they're attempting to fry their chicken in Clorox bleach. Bleached chicken comes back again, dude. It tastes okay, but scout leader, I can't see. He quickly removed the chicken and told them not to eat any. Though many younger scouts were upset that they didn't get to have some bleached chicken. He's blind. Why can't I be? I have ascended scout leader. Where'll I get my badge, scout leader?
What is the thought process?
I taste mercury in my mouth.
Do you think they got bleached chicken?
They better have gotten a Clorox badge at least. And they fucking ingested bleach. What else could you do to not fucking? You know what I mean? Come on. Need a new badge. One of the major events every scout looks forward to is the Pinewood Derby. Which is the only reason. That's the only reason I even joined, because I saw it one time and I was like, whoa. It's a simple race where scouts build and customize small wooden cars, then race them down a short wooden track. What is meant to be harmless fun turned into a biohazard when one scout broke the rules. In 2004, Quail Run School had to be evacuated after a Cub Scout slipped a vial of mercury onto the car. When it hit the bottom of the track, it crashed and spilled the toxic material everywhere. Over 70 people were exposed to mercury and had to be tested to make sure none suffered from serious poisoning. Right, that time I'd be like, what was the mercury for? I thought it just looked kind of cool. Scout leader. He's gonna be blind too, right? I dipped them in my eyes so I could see like God. Scout leader. I want to see heaven. Scout leader.
Yeah, where did he get the mercury?
Thermometer.
I dipped them in my eyes.
Probably.
Because I
It is
wanted to see
believed
God,
that the
scout
child's
leader.
parents were responsible for the modification, which was installed on the car to increase its weight despite it being against the rules. So they wanted to raise the weight by putting mercury on it?
Don't you? I thought everyone weighs their cars.
They do. Unless they're like, oh, you gotta, let's add the weight now. Put a fucking like marble in it. You have the thermometers? Yeah. What the fuck is happening? After all the hazmat cleaning and ventilation was through, a fine of $5,000 was issued and the event was held the following Saturday. We will start up next week. It is not over. All the kids. Ooh. All the blind kids. Oh, thank God. Lawrence Machida was an assistant scoutmaster for Troop 183 located in New York until he was arrested for sharing drugs with a young scout. If it's weed, if you're like, he's 18, you're like, he's 15, you're like, you want to hit, that's not a big deal. What I see in my mind is a guy being like, whoa, you look like a wizard. He's like, yeah, it's called PCP. Oh, PCP, that sounds weird. It's angel dust. Remember, you're Christian. Oh.
Oh, yeah, God.
According to reports, Lawrence had invited the 13-year-old troop member to his home, where he gave the teen LSD,
Oh, shit.
and alcohol.
13-year-old, come on.
13 years old.
Are you trying to impress a 13-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, I got some like crazy stuff in my house. You want to go back? I mean, what else does that look like? He was charged with 2 misdemeanors of unlawfully dealing with a child and failure to exercise control of a minor. After his arrest, he was removed from his position and charged $5,000 bail, which he posted with $2,500 in cash.
Oh, that's a young scout leader.
So he's just like,
he was probably 18.
he was the kid when he was 13. All the other people were like, oh, you're not gonna be able to drink and smoke with us because you're a fucking pussy. Yes, sir. Yes, Scoutmaster. And now he's in control and he's just like, I'm gonna give you the experience I've never had. But he just comes across as like, freak. LSD? If it was weed and alcohol, I'd be like, hey, probably was like, you want to hit of a joint and beer? I'm not saying that's appropriate, I'm just saying. LSD's insane. It's on your tongue. Oh, Scoutmaster! Is this hell?
Yeah. Is this hell?
It's like he first had bleached chicken and all of a sudden LSD. May I have one for the road, please? Another scout leader was ruining the lives of their troop by embezzling all of their funds. Amy Jo Modi had held numerous positions throughout her local Pennsylvania troop and was trusted with full access to all their financial accounts. In July of 2023, another leader in the troop notified their bank of suspicious activity and inconsistencies in their finances. And after further investigation, the police discovered that Amy had stolen $5,962 and spent all of it on herself. Receipts showed that she had used the money to pay her Netflix subscription, paid for multiple tattoos, and paid for all of her DoorDash orders. And after this discovery, she was arrested and charged with felony theft by unlawful taking. Amy's not the only scout leader to get a felony. Glenn Taylor and David Hall took their troop to Goblin Valley State Park in Utah for an outing when they came across a protected rock formation called Hoodoo. Show Hoodoo. So where we're getting ready to get into, it was there. These kinds of formations are very rare and take 2 million years to form, and a major tourist attraction in certain parks. After coming across this natural beauty, both men decided it would be a good idea to push it over. Why would that be a good idea? Yes, sir. Thank you, Scoutmaster. So David pulled out his phone and recorded Glenn toppling the structure while kids could be heard celebrating in the background. Yay! The recording soon went viral and earned both men felony criminal mischief and $5,000 fines apiece. Legal trouble wouldn't end there because just before the viral video, Glenn was suing a father and daughter for a car accident that supposedly caused him life-debilitating pain and sucked the joy out of his life. The father, who was being sued, saw the video and tried to get the case thrown out because there was clear evidence to show that Glenn suffered no injuries. Motherfucker was clapping and having a good time. However, Glenn's legal team argued that Taylor's quick recovery did not undo the medical bills and pain caused by the accident. After everything was settled, both men took a plea deal, which allowed them to avoid jail time. They followed the terms for 1 year. Many parents enroll their children in the Scouts to teach them discipline and skills that will prepare them for the future. One family tried to do this because their son was getting into trouble with his scientific experiments. But in the end, it didn't help. Ever since David Hahn was young, he had been interested in science and chemistry. His favorite book was the Golden Book of Chemistry Experiments, and he often performed small experiments from it. One of the more notable experiments told him how to make chloroform and instructed him to smell it, okay? Causing him to pass out for an hour.
You gotta smell that. You gotta be like,
Is this right? Fearing that his experiments might get more dangerous, he was enrolled in Boy Scouts to try and discipline him. But it only made him want to experiment more. After completing his Atomic Energy Merit Badge, David became inspired to try to create a nuclear reactor at home. He began stealing radioactive materials from smoke detectors, camping lanterns, batteries, and old clocks. He would then go back to his shed and use a Bunsen burner and a hollowed out block of lead to try to create a reaction. While he never successfully created nuclear energy, he was still exposed to dangerous levels of radiation that could be detected down the block. His experiments also caused his skin to burn, his hair to turn green, and he occasionally passed out from his condensed amount of radiation in his backyard shed. This kid kind of fucking rules, actually. It all came crumbling down in August of '94 when police stopped David and searched his vehicle.
Yeah, the
where they found a
radioactive
cool
Boy
box
Scout.
with
It was
an
a
odd
whole
gray powder.
whole
After
news
asking what it
story.
was, David told the officer it was radioactive, and they immediately called the EPA and NRC, which led to a search and seizure at his home. A few months later, the EPA deemed the home a super fun cleanup and removed 39 barrels of radioactive waste, which were taken to be stored in Utah. Officials also tried to get David to get medically evaluated, believing that he suffered severe damage from the major radiation he was exposed to, but David refused. I'm fine.
Nah, I'm good.
Raymond, she looks like the Joker. I'm okay. Do I look weird to you? After all the media attention died down, he would join the Navy and get honorably discharged. Following his departure,
Sounds
he
about
was
right.
diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He also had another FBI investigation after someone claimed he was hoarding nuclear material, but agents found no materials in his possession. Fucking Iraq all over again.
Jesus.
All they learned was David had started using cocaine and stopped taking his meds, which made him believe that people were out to shock his genitals with their brains.
What
2 months
the
after his
fuck?
interview with the FBI, he would be arrested for
Sounds,
stealing smoke
that sounds
detectors
pretty
in his
fun.
apartment building with the intent to remove the nuclear material. At the time of his arrest, his face was covered in burns, believed to be caused by exposure to nuclear
Holy
material,
shit.
and he was sentenced to 90 days in jail.
damn, he looks scary.
Which David, unfortunately, would die in 2016 due to an overdose of fentanyl and other drugs.
That took a turn. I was like,
Jesus.
What do you mean he didn't expect? Motherfucker was... How from a young age are you that obsessed with nuclear energy? He's like, yeah, David also recovered perfectly, and he's a normal fuck. No, I mean, he's gone. He's gone. Who knew the Boy Scouts could be so weird and insane, right? It's crazy to see what was supposed to be a fun way to get young boys in the outdoors turned into a hellscape of corrupt leaders and dangerous outings. With such a wide variety of threats and drama, it's no wonder that enrollment is at an all-time low. Which we didn't even scratch all of the weird sexual abuse and everything that happens. I mean, it is obvious, you know. Usually at this point, I just say, it's a video for another day. I'm not touching that. We already talked about, we got David in there. David's enough. All I gotta say is if you're in the Boy Scouts, run away.
Run away. Uh-oh.
I know. I'm
This
sure
guy's
there's some
gonna
motherfuckers
get
that
the
have good
thing
time
I'm
with
coming
Boy
up here
Scouts.
for.
Our
God
Boy Scouts is
damn it.
a club. We never actually did the activities. We just hang out and play video games.
Why are people fucking gathering herbs right now?
You seriously just keep painting him more and more as a monster. Yeah, we never went on camping trips we said we were going to. We just went back to my house.
We went to the snow one time for day trip.
He didn't tell anybody. We just went. Okay, that's our Boy Scout video. Hey, thank you, Scout Leader. We will see you next time, Scout Leader. Hoorah!
Do you think this could exist outside of Florida?
Nah.
Yeah, it's pretty much as Florida as it gets, I'd say.
Hey, where we at? We're at Swamp Fest, motherfucker!
It's day 2 of Swamp Fest. Absolutely turned up. It's a lot more chaotic today than it was yesterday. We got the 30 racks. We got some Crown Royal. We sipping that Canadian whiskey. Backflip! It smells like gasoline, mud, and blood. It's fucking lit out here.
So this is our 8th Swamp Fest we've been coming to. I think what Trey's doing with events like this kind of create the infrastructure of the whole BMX community. They work so fucking hard on this, and for as rowdy as the event is, the passion they put into it, it's like a dual thing. You got these guys that care so much about BMX and making a cool event. When I first started out, the divide between skate and BMX was super heavy, and now you can have an event with both sides and we get along perfect, you know? There's no divides, everybody's accepting. If you go down, the homies will pick you right up, and everyone kind of cares for each other. That's what makes it beautiful. Everybody just doing their thing.
First year we did it was at my friend's property in 2017. Built a bunch of shitty ramps and dirt jumps. Thousands of people showed up.
Oh.
And then after that, my sponsors were like, hey, you should get an official place. And I was like, I don't know how to rent a venue. And they kind of helped me, and then people just kept coming, and shit got bigger. And then we were like, well, we poured a concrete bowl, and then we did that. And then it was like, we'll build, I don't know, a monster truck, or, you know, all these different things. And everybody just wants to have fun. That's pretty much it. Just everybody wants to have a good time and relax. And it's not about who's better. There's X Games athletes here, Olympians, and kids that just got their first bike. So we're all the same. Nobody's special.
Just be open-minded and come out to Swamp Fest if you ever get a chance. It's amazing, man. Weather's beautiful. It's a weekend you won't forget. I'm not down with that. I don't support it down for. Okay.
Wait, what?
Weekend you won't forget.
Crack man.
I'm not down with that. I don't support it down for. Okay, let's go. Let's be good. Like I said, the people make those decisions. Definitely not me.
Seriously, we are gonna absolutely live this shit. Lighting everything on fire, monster trucks going on fire. It's fucking crazy. Burn, 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 motherfuckers.
It's fucking beautiful.
Man, I lit a lawnmower on fire earlier. It was pretty cool.
I'm awake. Oh my god.
Seeing the shit popping off. Oh, it's like some Phoenix rebirth shit. You feel me? Standing on business right here at Swamp Fest.
Oh, business.
Donald Trump! I'm Donald Trump's granddaughter.
It's true. It's true.
What?
You saw it here first.
They're tearing
What?
everything down. Every booth that was selling merch is being destroyed. Shit, goddamn.
Y'all scared?
Hey, I ain't scared, dude.
Yo, Channel 5. I love Channel 5. Dude does good work. Why wouldn't we survive the Aztec Empire?
A whole nuclear apocalypse and I die to a bear? That sucks. Well, time to go pop out a pine cone. Don't let that witch get you.
Why would he say that? Oh no. And the cycle continues.
What?
Hold your breath. You're getting flushed back into the times of the Aztec Empire, a Mesoamerican civilization renowned for its vehemently violent and vicious nature. Or at least that's how history remembers it, and you're about to find yourself in the heart of it all. You've surfaced right outside of the capital city. Think you could survive? Well, they didn't, so maybe you could. Let's find out. Welcome to Tenochtitlan.
Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan.
Located in what is
Chino
now Mexico
Titlan.
City, Tenochtitlan was once a sprawling metropolis and one of the most populated cities in the whole world, home to over 200,000 people. Now, despite what you may think, the Aztec Empire is actually not that old. This is the year 1519, the historical height of the empire. That is, until... But anyway, you begin kicking your little arms and leggies to get to shore, assuming you can swim. After all, Tenochtitlan was built on a huge friggin' lake. Lake Texcoco to be precise. Why? Because religion makes you do illogical things. You see, way back around 1325, the Aztec people, who actually called themselves the Mexica, were tasked by their patron god, Huitzilopochtli, to find a promised land upon which to build a brand spanking new city. Huitzilopochtli apparently appeared in a priest dream to deliver a divine prophecy with a soothing, ethereal voice.
You just spit on him?
The Mexico Valley, all while annoying the heck out of other indigenous groups, the weary wanderer's wayfare finally came to an end, on an island in the middle of a huge friggin' lake. Since this was not prime real estate in the slightest, many of the surrounding Mesoamerican civilizations who already disliked the aggressive violence...
Bro, he's got Banjo-Kazooie music in the
allowed them to
background.
stake their claim without protest, as building buildings on a lake was a fool's errand. Nonetheless, Tenochtitlan was built from the soggy ground up. Over
Is
the
that
span
is
of the
he
next
saying
100
that?
years,
I
the
don't
city
like
had
the way he's
flourished
saying
into a
that.
central hub of trading, education, and innovation, at least for its inhabitants. You see, decade after decade, the Mexica terrorized the surrounding lands, embarking on brutal and bloody conquests. These invasions established and expanded the Aztec Empire across roughly 80,000 square miles, beginning in 1428 all the way up to 1519. And here you are, so you better get to surviving. You can start by lifting your sopping self out of the saline water and flopping onto dry land. But wouldn't you know it, the jig's already up as you've been spotted by a local farmer. And unless you've got some heavy Mesoamerican blood pumping through your veins, they're gonna think you look weird, meaning that they'll be cautious. Sure, you could probably take out anyone in a 100-mile radius with a comedically timed sneeze, but you're not here to rewrite history. Just suffer through it. That being the case, you attempt to speak with the locals using your superb linguistics knowledge.
Por favor, manténgase alejado de las puertas.
No, you dingbat, they don't speak Spanish. Spanish aren't even here yet. Try something else. You ponder to yourself, scratching your long chin hair. Well, now what? You're exactly right. The Mexica had their own language called Nahuatl. See the little TL at the end there? It sounds like just a little right in the, kind of like in this word. You've probably been saying this as axolotl or ajolote from my Spanish speakers, but it actually comes from the Nahuatl language. So it would be correctly pronounced as axolotl. Be sure to drop that tidbit of knowledge into group chat so your friends can start a new one without you. Anyway, only about 1.5 million people today can even speak Nahuatl, and I'm willing to bet that you're not one of them. So if I were you, I'd about asho-lit my pants because you're an outsider, and this is the part where you get taken
Asho-lit my
captive,
pants.
or worse. If you are taken alive, you'd certainly wish that you weren't, but at least on the way to your doom, you'd be able to get a glimpse into the wonders that Tenochtitlan had to offer. Surprise, surprise. Another civilization, another hierarchy system. The social structure of the Aztec Empire is often debated, but it can be boiled down to your vanilla upper, middle, and lower classes. The big guy at the top is called the Huey Tlatoani, or Supreme Emperor. The upper class, of course, is all your rich folk, your priests, your warriors, and your nobles. Next were the farmers, merchants, fishermen, and artisans making up the laboring middle class, and the poor unfortunate scum at the bottom were mostly slaves and prisoners of war. Upward movement through these classes was certainly possible, but certainly rare, so get to pulling on them bootstraps as soon as they're invented. But even if you were just a run-of-the-mill peasant, life wasn't terribly awful. Everyone knew that they needed to work to keep the wheels turning. Men tended to the farms, women tended to the homes, and the kids tended to their studies. The city itself was also super clean, relatively speaking. Accounts from the Spanish conquistadors noted the exceptional hygiene and cleanliness practiced by the Mexica. Big ol' Spanish ball of rage Hernan Cortez, who is currently on his way over from Spain to mop the floor with Aztec blood, noted the city's impressive public health innovations, including baths and toilets and water fountains constantly supplied with fresh, clean water. There were even public servants scrubbing everything down on a daily basis. Waste was burned or recycled, and everyone's doo-doo feces fertilized the farms. That's good corn. Since personal hygiene was so ingrained in daily life, widespread disease was not an immediate threat. Yet, as long as there were no floods, droughts, volcanic eruptions, or earthquakes, life was pretty solid. The invention of sustainable, fertile floating farms called chinampas meant that food supply was fairly reliable. The local diet mainly consisted of vegetables or fruits. There's plenty of beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, there's corn if you're torn, a fish if you wish, or dry out some turkey for a jerky dish. You've got deer, duck, lizards, and dogs, but no cows, chickens, goats, or hogs. Grasshoppers, worms, larvae, or ants, all packed with protein, so give them a chance. There's lots of food just begging to be cooked. And no, there's no Chipotle out here. Trust me, I've looked. Alright, enough rhyming. Now you have to keep in mind that this sweet lifestyle was only within the city limits of Tenochtitlan. The Aztec Empire itself was huge, and at its height in 1519, the entire empire ruled over 500 city-states and about 6 million people. While the Mexica were the head honchos around these parts, the empire as a whole was actually a triple alliance of 3 main cities: Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan. But Tenochtitlan was the dominant power. Why? It's simple: fear. The Mexica were terrifyingly brutal and militaristic. Tenochtitlan was the promised land, remember, so they're gonna fight tooth and nail to defend what the gods have declared to be their home. So let's talk military. If you're going to be the main powerhouse of an empire and want to keep that empire from crumbling, you'd best believe that you need people who know how to fight. Surprisingly, Tenochtitlan itself had no standing professional military, so every male needed to be ready for a call to arms at a moment's notice in the event that a neighboring city starts getting all sassy. All male citizens in Tenochtitlan, regardless of class status, were required to go through rigorous warrior training at the age of 15. Intense daily exercise drills, marching formations, and weapon masteries were always on the menu. If you wanted to stab someone from a comfortable distance, you could always launch some arrows or huck a javelin. Close quarters combats called for clubs, spears, or this monstrosity, the makwawit. This was a wooden paddle adorned with razor-sharp obsidian stones, capable of ripping flesh from bone in a single swing. Its clever design allowed for 2 modes of operation: cutting if they were bad, and spanking if they were naughty. Although certainly capable of inflicting a crap ton of pain, the purpose of these weapons was not to necessarily kill, but to incapacitate. You see, the Mexica actually preferred to capture enemy warriors alive, for reasons we'll cut into later. But perhaps one of the most effective weapons for the Mexica was intimidation. The Mexica wore extravagant, colorful clothing designed to represent ferocious animals such as eagles, jaguars, and serpents. Sometimes full-on animal skins were used too, so imagine getting charged up by a screaming, hulked-out maniac dressed head to toe in jaguar skin. You'd just about invert yourself into a scared little raisin. So while Tenochtitlan had no standing army, it could call upon tens of thousands of trained soldiers at the drop of a hat. As a consequence of being conquered, all city-states within the Aztec Empire were forced to pay tribute to the Mexica, allowing them to maintain the healthy and wealthy lifestyle that you see before you as you're paraded through the city as a filthy prisoner. Failure to pay tribute meant certain death, so these cities were quick to offer up the goods, but of course, they were not happy about it. But none of that concerns you. Instead, you've been sent to court for the crime of being a strange-looking weirdo. Now, this can go one of 2 ways. Captured prisoners in the Aztec Empire either faced slavery or were offered up as a heavy metal sacrifice to the gods, the latter of which being the highest honor. But let's start with Believe it or not, being a slave under Aztec rule wasn't the worst because it wasn't really a system of oppression. Aztec slaves fell more into the category of indentured servitude instead of what we would think of as full-blown lifelong slavery. Slaves had basic rights, could marry freely, own land, and could even earn their freedom from their owners under the right conditions. I use the term owners here loosely, as they didn't outright own the person, just their labor. Owners were responsible for providing adequate food, shelter, and care for their slaves, and were even forbidden from mistreating them. And funny enough, if you could prove before a court that your owner was being a real asshat, you could most likely earn your freedom. If your owner was being extra dickish with verbal or physical lashings, they might even end up a slave themselves. Mexica criminal punishments went from 0 to 100 real quick. Victims of your petty crimes would have you provide financial compensation or you being enslaved to them to work off the debt. If you did something more serious, prepare to be publicly strangled or beaten to death with a big old stick or some rocks.
Hell
if you
yeah.
were a real bad boy, you'd be promoted to sacrifice, all of which are pretty effective crime deterrents. But not all slaves were criminals or prisoners. In fact, some were even volunteers. Yeah, some citizens chose to become slaves in order to work off a debt. After that debt had been paid, the contract was complete and both parties went about their merry way, satisfied with the transaction. Remember that physical labor is backbreaking, but debt is crippling. As for work, slaves were mainly assigned to complete domestic chores by their owners. Scrub the walls, scrub the halls, scrub my balls? Now, of course, sometimes the involuntary slaves, such as yourself, weren't as willing to participate in paying off their debt to society. Since slave owners were not permitted to sell their slaves without said slave's consent, they were in a bind. So it was time to return the favor using a wooden collar. Not only was this collar one of shame, but also inconvenience. Besides looking completely humiliating, it also had a tactical purpose. You see, there was this strange rule that if a slave was able to flee, exit the city, and, I shit you not, step on a human turd, they could request freedom before
What
a
the
court.
fuck?
You didn't clean your foot, did you? I did not. But since slave owners knew this silly rule, any slaves who were flight risks were given the collar, reducing their mobility in large crowds and doorways. They just die. You can also choose to no longer become a slave by marrying or having babies with your owner. But then you're back to
So you
square
could run
one.
outside
Any
the
slaves who
city,
continued
pop
to
a
be
squat,
troublemakers for their
and
owners
step
were
in your
given
own
3
shit and you
warnings
were
before
free.
being eligible to be sold as a sacrifice to the temples, should their owner permit. And he just did. Oh, sucks to be you right now. You're about to become a... Welcome to the Huayite Ocali, also known as the Templo Mayor, the main temple in the heart of Tenochtitlan and the religious epicenter of many a
Hell
sacrifice.
yeah, sacrifice.
It's also precisely where your heart is going to see sunlight for the first time in... ever. Religious societies can be pretty
Ever.
bloodthirsty. Just ask the Catholics. And the Mexica were no different. They firmly believed that their gods were fueled by blood offerings. For example, they believed that their patron sun god, Huitzilopochtli, required human blood to fight off the moon and stars at night to bring about a new day. So you can bet your beating chambers that blood flowed quite
That's
literally like
wild.
there was no tomorrow. With over 200 different gods in the Aztec pantheon, it's quite a lot of mouths to feed. Harvested blood would be poured over statues of the gods while it was still fresh so they could get a little fit. Who's a hungry boy? You are. Warriors, of course, had the best tasting blood right behind prisoners and children, so they were given priority over everyone else, making them a hot commodity. In order to keep supplies stocked, the Mexica would often host events called Flower Wars, where at least 2 cities would send out troops to fight one another for the sake of capturing POWs for sacrifice. It's a real win-win. Now, when you think of Aztec human sacrifice, your mind probably goes straight to the iconic heart ripping and ripping. And you'd be right. Slapping a slave on a sacrificial slab and serving a swift stab to the sternum for the sudden surge of that sweet sanguine secretion. But when sacrifices were such a spectacle, variety was the spice of life. If you've seen one heart out of a human body, you've seen them all. Thanks, LiveLeak. Many methods of sacrifice were specific to each god. You want some rain? Drown some crying kiddos in a nearby lake for the rain god. Want to keep volcanic eruptions at bay?
Hell yeah.
Try to burn some women for the fire god. You want a bountiful harvest? We've got decapitation and flaying for the god of agriculture. Enthusiastic priests would even go as far as wearing the flayed skin just for that extra bit of pizzazz. The problem with these kinds of practices is that eventually it's going to rain again, volcanoes will have dormant periods, and some harvests will naturally provide higher yields. So if things turned out well, it's because the sacrifices worked. If they didn't, that's because you didn't sacrifice enough. You can see how this is a feedback loop. Sometimes, though, sacrifices were performed on a large scale to slake a large thirst. For example, the grand opening ceremony
Sunflower
of the
seeds.
Templo Mayor allegedly saw the blood of over 80,000 captives and slaves pour down the freshly carved stone, though historians do debate if this number is even accurate.
Sunflower
What's not up for
seeds.
debate, though, is what's about to happen to you. Say adios to that heart of yours, buddy.
Stop!
Oh no. Conquistadors.
Cortez! Oh, am I glad to see you. Necesito ir the fuck home. Comprende? Where the fuck were you?
No, you don't eat
Well,
everything.
that was quite the entrance you've made, but you couldn't have picked a
You like
worse
crack
time
it
to
open
fall out
and
of
eat
the
the
sky.
seed on the inside.
Looks like you've landed in Salem, Massachusetts.
Have you
know, a
never
place
eaten a
filled with
sunflower
witches and
seed
whatnot?
before?
Yeah, that one. Now don't be fooled. It may seem like a simple, peaceful, and wholesome village.
Bro, where do you live?
Because one wrong move could have you swinging from a rope. So, do you think you could survive this Puritan hellhole? Let's
Bro,
find out.
your butthole probably hates you.
Welcome to Salem, Massachusetts. Founded in 1626,
No, it
the
does.
settlement of
I talked
Salem
to it.
quickly
It told me
established
it hates
itself
you.
as a bastion for English Puritans. They were a group of religious nutjobs who sailed over from across the pond after facing religious persecution. Basically, their religion was a tad too crazy, even for the Church of England. You see, Puritans wholly believed that they were God's chosen few, that only they would be allowed through the cloud-covered pearly gates and everyone else could kick rocks. In hell. They also believed that Big Red Spirit Halloween Satan himself roamed the earth, wreaking havoc as a full-time job.
Yeah.
Anything odd or inexplicable
pretty tight.
was the devil's doing. And any acts of the devil were met with swift punishment. Excuse me, what are you doing? Oh, just having a whistle. Oh. Not in this village, you're not. Pardon me, what are you doing? Oh, for fuck. Being a Puritan society, religious figures are the ones that ruled, and the biblical texts were the rules. Whatever the book says goes, with no room for improvisation.
I do.
The church itself controlled everything, from the way you walked to the way you talked, from how you were dressed to what you'd ingest. But the church often stressed how you should feel blessed, so if you've ever felt repressed, you must confess or be placed under arrest. Gotta love a concentrated society of religious fanatics. What could go wrong? Right? Fast forward several decades, and here we are in a cold January in 1692, the start of a new year for the town. Well, you've got to get to fitting in, so best introduce yourself.
Good morrow.
Hello.
Pardon?
Bad move. The word hello won't be used as a greeting for another 100 years.
Thou art not from around hither, art thou?
No.
Methought so.
Try again.
Good morrow.
Good morrow. That's better. Remember, the great thing about a small village like this is that everyone knows each other. The worst thing is that everyone knows each other. But it looks like you're about to run into someone familiar? Dude! Ron? Is that you?
Yes, sir.
Where the hell did you come from?
Well, I saw this cool little green portal thingy and jumped right on through. Heck of a ride. Wouldn't do it again, though. It inverted my belly button and made me piss myself. Anyway, look who I found.
Who's that?
This loose slab of butter right here is my great something or other Uncle Jimothy, Salem's finest blacksmith. So I've been told.
Oi, how'd you figure that out?
Well, I asked him. But I also researched him on my heritage.
My heritage? You mean today's sponsor?
That's the one. The #1 online database for discovering your family's roots. No need to drool on a DNA swab. I just signed up and began putting in some very basic information like names and dates, granting me access to over 36 billion public records right at my fingertips. All it took was the magic 7 to sow the seed. Parents, grandparents, and yours truly. And get this, their instant discoveries feature helped me streamline the process to connect parts of my family tree that I never knew existed. Look, when I found out that my maternal side was a bit questionable, I started looking towards my dad's side. That's when I found this big old boiling bowl of broth. Sure, the art of photography is way after his time, but I mean, come on.
The stance, the affinity for orange, the eyebrows. This fella's a fart knocker through and through. But any of my photogenic relatives could get special treatment through the MyHeritage photo enhancement feature to go from looking good to looking fantastic. Look at that. Whoop, whoop, whoop. What a handsome fella. There's always something new to discover about your own beautiful bloodline to see where your roots come from. Well, that sounds pretty neat. How's it done? Well, it's easy. Just navigate your cursor or finger to click that link in the pinned comment below to start a 14-day free trial today to see if it whets your whistle. It's free for 14 days. Anyways, where were we? I think we were just talking about... The hell was that? Let's check it out. Oh boy, the two girls pitching a fit on the ground are none other than 12-year-old Abigail Williams and 9-year-old Betty Paris. Their actions are about to set forth quite a series of unfortunate events, and they won't even start Jim Carrey. Looks like this calls for a doctor's opinion. Aye, this be a case of
Witchcraft.
No. If there's one place you don't want to be in this world, it's being in the middle of a religion-obsessed community that's been given the news that the devil himself may be walking amongst them. The news of the girl's possible bewitchment set the entire village of Salem completely on edge. Despite a solid month of good old homemade remedies like fasting, burning herbs, Jorkin crystals, or that iconic prayer mumbo-jumbo, nothing seemed to work. Were the girls just joshing, or was something more malevolent lurking in the shadows? Samuel Paris, the town's minister and father to Itty Bitty Betty, was desperate for answers. Finally, someone offered a more creative approach. Entering stage left is Samuel's neighbor, Mary Sibley. Entering stage right are Sam Paris's personal servants, John Indian and Tituba. They're slaves. Together, the three concocted a plan to fight fire with fire. Since desperate times call for desperate measures, this brought the concept of counter magic to the table. Although a potential solution, however a bunch of baloney it may be, the act of performing counter magic was just as offensive in the eyes of Puritans as black magic, and just as dangerous. Shoo-ba-da-boo! But what are you gonna do? Just let your daughter or niece scream and flail about on the ground like they were told no at a toy
What
store?
up, Major?
Didn't think
Long
so.
time no
So,
see.
Reverend Paris did what he had to do. The proposed solution? Just bake a cake. Now, it's easy to bake a pretty cake, but you gotta do the cooking by the book. And this is the book. So, this is the cake. Made from a mix of rye flour and, I shit you not, a cup of the afflicted's own urine, this disgusting dessert was then offered to the Paris' dog as a way to ward off these sinister symptoms and, in turn, cause physical harm to the witch responsible for casting the curse. Shockingly, it didn't work. And to make matters worse, 2 more young girls were getting down with the sickness. The girls claimed that they were being constantly tormented by evil spirits, but none of the other villagers ever
Always
witnessed
lurking.
the supposed spooky
Hell
specters.
yeah.
My sweet spazzing children, who did this to you?
Oh, hell no!
The girls named 3 women as witches: Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. The 3 were arrested and brought before a court to confess their crimes. Both Sarahs maintained their innocence, but Tituba caved. She confessed that she, along with Sarah 1 and Sarah 2, were wicked witches. Now, why in the frickin' heck would she do this, you might ask, scratching your itchy kneecaps? Because Sam Paris, her master, told her to. After being formally accused, Tituba was threatened to admit guilt or be smashed KO'd off screen with 0 stock. So which do you choose? Death at the hands of a single man, or by a jury of your peers?
Playing
She chose
Midnight?
the
Nah.
latter. But to throw a wrench
Playing
into things,
TBC Anniversary.
Tituba offered one more tidbit of information. There were more witches in the village. She just didn't know who. It could be anybody. Little Ann could have an evil plan. Big James could be casting flames. Could it be Johnny with his golden fiddle? Or Tom, whose last name was Riddle? No one knew, and that was the problem. In one fell swoop, Tituba used history's greatest weapon: fear. And this wasn't just the run up my basement steps really fast so the demons don't get me type of fear. This was full-blown paranoia. And paranoia is an unlubed shaft just aching to cause some damage. Fear was at an all-time high, and trust was at an all-time low. With neighbors now turning on each other at the slightest inconvenience, this led to an overwhelming increase in accusations. So let's take a look at what it took to be accused of witchcraft. When paranoia goes full tilt, no one is safe. No man, woman, child, or even the village dog is free from suspicion. Between February of
Look at that dog.
1692 and May of 1693, it's believed that over 200 people in and around Salem were accused of witchcraft. The main character in a lot of these allegations was 12-year-old Ann Putnam Jr., who was personally responsible for putting over 60 innocent people on trial, some of whom were executed. But you didn't have to be caught red-handed
I've been
smearing
good,
toad
brother.
blood on a
How
pentagram
about
of
you?
candles to be considered
How's
an
life
evil
treating you?
witch.
What games
Even
you getting
simple,
into
everyday
lately?
tasks or coincidences were viewed as the devil's work to a bunch of cuckoo crazy people.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking me about Scars of Honor and if I'm gonna play. I'll be honest, since AOC went down, I haven't really looked at any games. I've just kind of been chilling, playing WoW, TBC, and whatever else I already have on my computer. What game? What are you asking what game to? I didn't say any game. Yeah, a lot of people have been asking me about Scars of Honor, if I'm gonna play it. I haven't even looked into it at all, though. I don't know. I haven't even looked into it at all. Yo, what up, Astro? Bro, this herbalism shit's gonna fucking kill me, dude. I've tried to layer to a different layer here like 20 times. I feel like there's only one layer here, and there's like 5 people gathering herbs here right now. Let me see if I can layer. mean, that looked like a successful layer. Got mining and herb to 200 and stop. Yeah, it's fucking, it's rough, bud. It's rough. It is not enjoyable at all. Yeah. I mean, I got lucky, I think, when I logged in. I think I got on a good layer because I logged out in Tannerus yesterday, doing Fire Blooms and Purple Lotus. And I think I got in a good layer on Tannerus because I just ran around. It only took about like an hour or less to get to 230, and then 230, then I come to the hinterlands. Maxed out blacksmithing on your warrior last week. 375. That's crazy, dude. Oh my god. I just had a fart sneak up on me, and I was about to let it out, but then I don't think it's a fart. It's an MMO, bro. Early access sometime this year. Skill trees for classes like PoE, PvP, Arena. Look it up, more info. ESO will tell you. I'm bad at explaining. I'm in a dungeon. Yeah, I'll look into it eventually. I just, not at all motivated to look into it right now. What I am motivated to do is fucking hit 375 alchemy and herbalism, and then get to level 70, do some PvP and some raids, and, you know, go from there.
If you found yourself strong enough to lift a heavy gun, it's because the devil helped you. So now your days are done. If you can kill off crops with just a single glance, there's not much I can say. You don't stand a chance. If you brewed a bit of food that a rude dude chewed and subsequently spewed, your years of life accrued were about to conclude. Even petting a black cat without giving a dang, each one of these reasons was enough for you to hang. Now, if you think that these were just dope rhymes with no reason, you're wrong. These were very real claims by the people of Salem. George Burroughs, one of Salem's ex-ministers, was a beefy boy. He lifted a really heavy musket when no one else could. Very impressive, but a bit too impressive. He was tried and executed. Martha Carrier faced the gallows after apparently hexing and killing a neighbor's entire livestock by just looking at them.
Damn.
It was pure mayhem. But not everyone agreed with what was going on. Luckily, some sound-minded villagers were not buying the bullshit, and many protested the imprisonment of obviously innocent people. Unluckily, those who called the trials a bunch of baloney were also thrown in the clink. This is a bunch of baloney. This ain't witchcraft. Ron? Oh no. Looks like Ron's about to face a fate worse than death. The legal system. Well, time for a trial. Here we are, the trials of the century.
Bro, the Salem witch trials, like the actual trials, the shit that they did to find out if somebody was a witch or not, is so fucking stupid. Like, here, we're gonna tie a boulder to you and throw you in a lake. If you survive, you're a witch. If you die, you're not a witch, but possibly still a witch.
News of witchcraft allegations reached far and wide, prompting intervention from the Massachusetts government to sort it all out. Thus, the Salem witch trials commenced, fancy powdered wigs and all. You know, English things. Thankfully, since the trials happened only a few hundred years ago, there's still lots of surviving documents from Salem. Lots of them. So we can still get a pretty clear picture of how everything went down, or at least the version that was written. The court structure was very similar to what it is today. A judge, a jury, witnesses, testimonies, all that. But sprinkling in the complete paranoia that infested the village, things got interesting. The main accusers, the teenage girls Abigail Williams and Ann Putnam Jr., were present at pretty much
Abigail
every trial,
Hobbs.
much to the dismay of anyone whom they accused. If the defendants gave any attempt at denying the allegations, then the show would start. For poor Bridget Bishop, the girls claimed that they were being tortured by her evil, spooky ghost. The girls would break out into fits and convincing seizures in court to make it seem like Bishop was cursing them from afar, like a witch would. That's not how that works. Bridget Bishop was convicted and hanged on June 10th, 1692. Miss Martha Corey's testimony saw some real creativity. After publicly calling out the girls on their bullshit, Martha put herself in the crosshairs and was forced to defend her own innocence in court shortly after. While giving her testimony, the girls began to mimic her movements. When Martha raised her hand, so did the girls. If she turned her head, they followed. The girls cried out, claiming that they were being puppeted by the devil, and Martha was the one pulling the strings. Are thou fucking serious? 72-year-old Martha Corey was convicted and hanged on September 22nd, 1692. Martha's
crazy.
husband, Giles, is probably the most famous death of these Salem witch trials. But the guy was a certified asshole.
What about during the Black Plague? They accused single women that weren't sick of being a witch when really they just owned a cat that stopped mice entering that. Yeah. I remember reading that too. That's where the whole like black cat thing came from with witches.
Having turned on his own wife after she was accused, ultimately testifying against her and giving examples of her witchcraft, like reading too much or nagging him too often. He did later attempt to rescind these allegations, but it was a bit too late as she was already doomed to hang. Now with Giles being on trial himself, he refused to plead guilty or not guilty. He knew that regardless of his plea, he would still end up being converted to a human wind chime. Boy, was he wrong. Instead, he was given more pressing matters. Literally. As punishment for his supposed crimes, Giles was forced to endure peine forte de Dieu. That's French for strong and hard pain. What this meant was being laid on the ground under a board. Big, beautiful boulders were added to the board, distributing their weight across his body. Hundreds of pounds of stone pressed down on Corey across 3 whole days. His final words?
Take it easy, Mindrax.
Wait. He was 81, but now it looks like it's Ron's turn to defend himself. Let's see how that goes. Ronald J. Fartknocker, thou hast been accused of witchcraft. What say you in your defense? I didn't do shit. He's innocent! Huh? What's all this? Your Honor, I've known Ron for years. We've been through so much together. That's right. We sort of survived a whole nuclear apocalypse together. He knows what a real witch is. She's been using powerful magic to torment him for years, sending him all across time. Greece, Japan, Egypt, you name it. It's true. Wait a minute. I only ever told you about the nuclear apocalypse. How did you know about the others? You just couldn't go along with it, could you? And here I thought you were a smart fella, not a fart smeller. You're not Ron. You're... No. Took you long enough. That's a witch. Well, we've never really burned a witch before, but we'll take your word for it. Yeah. It'll work. Remember, you can sign up for a 14-day free trial with MyHeritage today to start exploring your own family tree. Links in the pinned comment below. Okay, love you. Bye. Evil Human Experiments, Part 4. This was the Willowbrook State School for Children with Intellectual Disabilities in Staten Island, New York. And it was home to one of the worst cases of human experimentation ever conducted on American soil. Originally
Oh.
constructed in 1942 as a United States Army hospital, the facility was quickly converted to a state-sponsored mental institution in 1947 after the World War sequel rolled its credits. But as you can imagine, anything state-sponsored usually turns to shit over time. Well, over the following decades, everything went to shit. Originally designed to house 4,000 students, the school was bursting at the seams as it struggled to contain over 6,000. Poor funding and understaffing led to abhorrent living conditions for the children and young
Abhorrent?
adults who
Abhorrent?
called the facility home.
Abhorrent?
Although the school advertised proper care and treatment for its students, the
Sir.
reality was far different from this facade that they tried to sell. Reporters who visited
Say
the
the word
school wrote of
correctly.
the horrors within the walls, documenting the absolute filth and neglect that these children were experiencing. Children pointlessly wandered or sat isolated throughout the day, some children locked in rooms for hours on end, and some savagely beaten by their supposed caretakers. No treatments were being administered, no attention given, no attempts at any education whatsoever. Now, this isn't to say that the entire staff was cruel. Some of the nurses did try their best to care for patients using what little resources they had, but like I said, the entire school was critically understaffed, with some single caregivers given responsibility for over 100 children each. There's no feasible way to provide an adequate level of care when you're spread so thin. Any staff who spoke out about this were either silenced or fired. New York state representatives couldn't give a flying flip about the living conditions of those that they deemed parasites on society. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of labor. Now, on top of all of this, the horrendous living conditions of filth and neglect made way for a worse threat: disease. By 1958, nearly 90% of the children at Willowbrook were infected with hepatitis,
Oh,
with most
God.
new arrivals contracting it within days. In order
How?
to address this, they called in an expert. Dr. Saul Krugman. Hello. He was the leading physician in the study of hepatitis at the time, so understandably, he was the right man for the job. You see, hepatitis had been wreaking havoc across known human history, dating all the way back to the times of the ancient Greeks. The big bearded daddy of medicine himself, Hippocrates, documented outbreak symptoms of fever, liver damage, and yellowing skin. The same symptoms as hepatitis. With the virus having a recent outbreak on American troops during World War II, Krugman wanted to release humanity from its grasp by any means necessary. And to do that, he needed data. To get that, he needed subjects. The children. Well, they wouldn't be able to consent
Not
to
the
such
children.
experiments now, would they? The harsh truth is that most of these kids had limited mental function as it was, but there was a little thing called the Declaration of Helsinki that would prove useful. In case you're unaware, after the Nuremberg medical trials where Nazi doctors and nurses were tried for their war crimes, a medical code was developed, the Nuremberg Code. Established in 1947, the code brought forth a set of 10 ethical principles for human experimentation. As we know, human experimentation is a medical necessity. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But there are more ethical approaches that we can take to be respectful of those whom are being experimented on. Things like voluntary informed consent, or the subject's right to withdraw from experimentation if they feel that they are in danger. But just to be clear,
I'm in
the code was not
danger.
legally binding. It was just a strong set of guidelines. In 1964, the Declaration of Helsinki was proposed, another set of ethical guidelines built from the Nuremberg Code but with a little bit more detail and some slight changes. For Krugman's case, these are the most important. Informed consent could now be granted by legal guardians should the subject be incapable of providing consent themselves. Also, medical providers were given the responsibility to stop experimentation if, in their judgment, the experiments were causing harm. So how did that last pill make you feel? Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Symptoms have dissolved. Good. This revised
So
set
has
of
the
codes put
human.
Krugman at an advantage, and he was about to activate his trap card. He now had a slew of potential test subjects at his disposal. He just needed their guardian's consent. Krugman then drafted carefully worded letters explaining the research, recruiting parents to send their intellectually disabled children to Willowbrook. Parents were promised that if they gave consent, their children would be given priority to be admitted to newer and cleaner research wards and given experimental vaccines to possibly become immune to hepatitis. They were basically told, hey look, your kid's gonna get hepatitis anyway. Might as well let us test this experimental medicine. Sure, Willowbrook did have a terrible reputation as a care facility, but it was still a care facility and remained the only option for some families. Within a few weeks, Krugman had 700 children volunteered by their desperate parents. Parents who just wanted to give their children a chance at proper care that they couldn't provide themselves. Upon admittance into the school, experiments were conducted in two main phases, one for immunity studies and the other for treatment studies. The immunity group was injected with antibodies and closely monitored to gauge their efficacy. Children simply carried on their day-to-day existence to see if they would still contract the virus. The other group were the unlucky ones. While still given the antibodies, they were deliberately infected with hepatitis. This was either done with direct injection or the drink, a mixture of chocolate milk and infected fecal matter from sick children.
Fuck?
Yeah, they really did that. Through experimentation, Krugman learned the amount of the milk needed to cause infection and how long it would take for them to start showing symptoms. Children who managed to recover from the virus were then later reinfected to test for any developed immunities. Krugman looked on as these children suffered, their skin and eyes turning yellow, and them vomiting and refusing to eat. Despite this suffering, Krugman's research was successful. Not only did the experiment drastically speed up the eventual production of a suitable hepatitis vaccine, but helped identify both hepatitis A and B as separate variants. But of course, this didn't stop the criticism. The medical community was completely appalled by Krugman's actions. Although he provided the world with an exceptional discovery and medical progress, he did so while harming his fellow humans, which goes against the medical code of ethics. Paul Offit, a director of the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, stated that he didn't believe anyone is, quote, ever justified to inoculate a child with an infectious virus that might kill them. Furthermore, famed vaccinologist Maurice Hilleman stated that Krugman's research was, quote, the most unethical medical experiment ever performed on children in the United States.
Well, yeah, you fed children
until
poop.
1972 when Geraldo Rivera, a local investigative reporter, snuck into the Willowbrook school. Inside, he documented the atrociously inhumane living conditions and broadcast them to the world. It was only then did anyone learn the true horrors within the walls. Sure, there were reports in the past, but seeing was believing. Public outcry surrounding unethical experiments like the ones at Willowbrook, as well as the Tuskegee syphilis study, prompted government officials to act. By 1974, the National Research Act was put into law, requiring any federally funded research involving human subjects to be reviewed and approved by a designated review board. Despite various attempts to refurbish the school, conditions at Willowbrook never improved, leading to its eventual closure in 1987. Krugman, although facing initial backlash for his research, was later praised for his breakthroughs. His past sins were swept under the rug as he became the president of the American Pediatric Society in 1972. He died peacefully several years later in 1995 at the age of 84. It's just tragic to think about the various types of human experimentation used throughout our history. I mean, if you look over here at what the? Oh, fuck. Do you know what your life is missing? No, but I bet you're about to tell me. Probably a good desk mat. Ah, there it is. How many nights do you spend awake yearning for something fashionable, comfortable, and durable to grace your desk? Well, your prayers have been answered. These are the first official pieces of chat history merch cooked up by myself and my buddies over at Epic Desk. Each one of these beautiful little babies is a handcrafted work of art. But I don't have a desk at home. Don't have a desk at home? Nope, just said that I did. Not to worry, because you can use an Epic Desk mat for other things like having a nice breakfast, playing a nice card game, slapping a nice bug, holding a memorial for a nice bug, and so much more. These mats are the definition of quality. I should know. I've owned mine for a few months now, and I know that this is the last desk mat that I'll ever need.
What the fuck is that mouse?
What more proof do you need? You've got Nero fiddling through the fire as well as the flames, the scheming witch and her victim, the hunky honkin' Brit, and my personal favorite, the whole gang with your favorite fella front and center. Epic Desk has a fantastic reputation amongst the creator community, having collaborated with hundreds of talented creators to produce real works of art. So if you want to go ahead and get yourself or a friend your own quality piece of history, use my link in the
God,
comments
yes,
below to get
more,
started.
daddy.
Supplies are limited though, so don't dilly-dally too long. Orders are available through October 12th. Once they're gone for good. Must buy desk mat. Yeah, that's right. Canadians are usually seen in a pretty great light, their morality as high as their house prices. But not everything in their history is all sunshine and syrup. Back in 1942, while the world was going to war over in Europe, Canada had itself quite a domestic display of detrimental dread that would cause suffering for over a decade. The Canadian government was making a push to set nutritional standards across the board for all Canadians, setting a baseline for a healthy and nutritious diet so that little lads and ladies could grow up to be formidable fellas and fellettes. It was around this time that breakthroughs in vitamin and mineral isolation were being made, allowing individual supplements to come to market. So, what's this one called? Oh, that's vitamin A. Huh, vitamin A. Neat. Research surrounding the daily recommended intake amounts of such supplements was critical to give proper recommendations for general public consumption. Not only that, but researchers were curious if these supplements could provide additional health benefits outside of just maintaining normal bodily function. In order to test the true advantages of these nutrients, you needed a night and day comparison, both strong and healthy subjects and malnourished ones. Very malnourished ones. Enter Canadian nutritionist and biochemist Lionel Peck. He heard whispers of severe malnutrition amongst various indigenous populations in the Great White North, particularly in the northern region of the province of Manitoba. He brought along a couple buddies. He had Dr. Percy Moore, a medical superintendent in the Department of Indigenous Affairs, as well as famed nutritionist and pediatrician Dr. Frederick Tisdall. Together, the three men set out to investigate the claims. What they found was nothing short of tragic. To say that these people were starving would be an understatement. The level of malnutrition was crippling. Elders were completely bedridden, children had their growth drastically stunted, and even the able-bodied adults were barely able to function. This led the indigenous population to experience dramatically disproportionate death rates, nearly 52 times the rate of tuberculosis deaths, 8 times the national rate of infant mortality, and 5 times the overall death rate. And that wasn't all. Hunger in these state-sponsored boarding schools for the indigenous children was a constant plague. Thanks to intentional underfunding from the Canadian federal government, these schools were incapable of providing decent food for students. Some schools were noted having no refrigeration or appliances, no basic sanitation, or even trained kitchen staff. School children had no choice but to consume food that was practically inedible. Soggy scraps of bread and old water, rancid bits of meat, and rotting vegetables were the norm. Children were estimated to only be consuming around 1,200 calories a day if they were lucky. That's well below even the bare minimum recommended caloric intake of 1,400 calories a day. Approximately 28% of the girls and 70% of the boys were reported as underweight for their age. But instead of bringing these issues, the very obvious root of school-wide malnutrition to light, Pett, Moore, and Tisdall saw these withering children and thought, great, there's our test subjects. And so they got to work. Their goals? Study the negative effects of malnutrition itself and if they can be positively offset by nutrient-fortified foods. Together, the three men gathered data points using over 1,000 indigenous children from several boarding schools across Canada. Blood samples, physical exams, and aptitude tests all used to establish a baseline across 2 years. 2 grueling years of known malnutrition for the sake of data collection. Imagine doctors coming to your school, seeing you skin and bones, your brown teeth glistening in the incandescent light, and telling you that they're gonna help. But in 2 years. Insane. In 1948, Moore and Tisdall began their experimental design. Until Tisdall bit the dust a year later in 1949. He was 55. At the Port Alberni Residential School, students were noticed to have an abnormal riboflavin deficiency as a result of lack of dairy and vegetables. Riboflavin, also known as vitamin B2, helps the body convert food into energy. So the kids were given triple the amount of dairy milk allowance. That's it, just more milk. The Shubenacadie School, crazy name as it is, showed lower measures of ascorbic acid, or vitamin C, in its respective blood sampling. Vitamin C, it's pretty important for your immune
This
system,
looks like a
helps
bot,
prevent you
dude.
from
This is a
getting all
bot
the
for
icky
sure.
chickies. Half of these students received vitamin C tablets, the other, placebos. Children at the blood school were pretty low in vitamin B1. Also known as thiamine,
That's a
vitamin
bot
B1
name.
plays a vital role in cellular growth and development. They were given a tasty vitamin B fortified flour. Eat up. Similar to Port Alberni, St. Mary's children also lacked riboflavin.
Oh wait, I can't talk
but
to him.
Instead of milk, these kiddos were given a fortified flour containing bone meal, which wasn't even legal for sale under Canadian law. Finally, the very unfortunate students at St. Paul de Métis were left with no changes whatsoever. They were the control group. Sorry, guys. Despite the knowledge of the severe lack of quality of nutrition at each and every one of these schools, no additional interventions outside of these supplements were ever made. In fact, many of the staff were actually instructed to withhold any access to dental hygiene for the students, lest it skew their data. None of these children were ever informed that they were being treated as glorified lab rats, nor had any parents ever been told about these experiments. It was all a secret. These experiments lasted for 5 years. 5 years of continued and deliberate malnutrition of children. To no surprise, many died. Even before the experiments, death was prevalent in these schools. And yet, the studies continued, finally concluding in 1953. The results? No breakthroughs, no discoveries, nothing medically valuable that wasn't already known to the healthcare community. Ultimately, the results were inconclusive at best. The suffering was pointless and fruitless. Ashamed of his worthless work, Dr. Percy Moore kept the studies hidden. It wasn't until 2013 when historian Dr. Ian Mosby uncovered the studies and made them public to the world, 60 years after the experiments had ended. Because the research remained hidden for the rest of their lives, both Dr. Pett and Dr. Moore continued to have successful careers, remaining prominent Canadian healthcare figures. Moore died in 1987 from Alzheimer's at the age of 88, and Pett died in 2003 at the age of 93, probably because he was old as dirt. Harsh criticism came after their work was revealed, sure, but too little, too late. Even in the shadow of a devastating disaster, no one's safe from unethical medical curiosity. On the night of December 3rd, 1984, the city of Bhopal in the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh was in for a rude awakening. A silent death cloud crept across the city, with families abruptly torn from their sleep, aggressively coughing, their eyes inexplicably stinging, and their lungs desperate for fresh air. Within hours, residents fled from their homes to seek refuge, but thousands lay dead in the streets and in their homes. The Bhopal disaster is considered to be one of, if not the worst industrial accidents in the history of mankind. An accidental release of gaseous methyl isocyanate, a poisonous tearing agent compound, caused the death of nearly 20,000 impoverished Indian civilians, with nearly 2,000 of them being immediate and 8,000 in the following days. This disaster was the result of neglected underfunding from the Union Carbide Corporation. Various budget cuts at the plant had caused huge gaps in safety and maintenance of chemical production equipment within the facility. Nearly 45 tons of poisonous gas was accidentally released across the city, killing livestock as well as entire families. It's estimated that as many as 500,000 people were directly affected by this disaster. The area surrounding the plant still remains contaminated to this day, even after some half-assed cleaning efforts. Residents living in the area have reported severe health issues years after the incident, many of which being crippling birth defects of those born in the wake of the disaster. As a bit of a band-aid, Union Carbide, the American corporation that owned the plant, paid a modern-day equivalent of $1 billion in compensation in 1989. The Indian government used some of these funds to open the Bhopal Memorial Hospital and Research Center in the late 90s. A hospital which, while open to any needy patient, also provided free medical treatment to any survivors which, at this point, nearly 2 decades later, were in the hundreds. But these survivors would soon be subjected to a new wave of suffering. A caveat made with the construction of the new hospital was that the victims would be studied to determine long-term effects of methyl isocyanate exposure. However, no supporting documentation has ever been found that this research was ever even conducted. Between the years of 2004 and 2008, the hospital was instead commissioned to run several clinical trials funded by various big-name pharmaceutical companies including Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline, and Bristol-Myers Squibb. Remember, it wasn't just a hospital, it was also a medical research center. It's right there in the name. The participants? 279 hand-picked patients, 215 of which were victims of the Bhopal gas leak with severe chronic conditions. But why pick them? Well, it's been suggested that since these victims were being treated on the government's dime, they were a bit more disposable. These clinical trials focused on testing various drugs and therapies for any adverse effects in humans. These included gastrosurgery, cardiology, psychiatry, and anesthesiology. Participants, if you could really call them that, were given no informed consent on the matter. One survivor who endured the trials was quoted saying, "They didn't tell me anything about the medicine. When they used to give me the medicine bottle, they used to make me sign a form which I had no clue about." In 2011, investigative journalists discovered and compiled the abhorrent trials in a comprehensive report which you can read in my description below if you're interested. Pfizer focused on antibiotic trials which caused terrible adverse effects. GSK sponsored illegal cardiology trials in
Sounds like a
collaboration
good
with French
time.
pharmaceutical company Sanofi Aventis. Of the 57 patients in their trials, 5 died. There's evidence to support that at least 10 patients died as a result of these various trials. The companies responsible were found to have been in violation of many of the Nuremberg and Declaration of Helsinki principles. For example, any trial-related deaths must be thoroughly investigated and publicly reported in a timely manner. Some of these deaths weren't reported until months or even years later. Now, there was an ethics committee for the trials, which are supposed to be a third-party, non-biased group responsible for overseeing the ethics of the experiment, but get this, 13 of the 19 committee members were doctors performing the trials. Even the freaking ethics committee was unethical. Despite becoming aware of these very obvious and just completely abysmal red flags, the Drug Controller General of India simply sent a warning note to the hospital, which was basically just a big, cut it out, mister. In 2013,
Cut it out, mister.
outspoken activists and court petitions demanded compensation for the victims of the trials, but of course, none were ever distributed. Gotta love corruption. Sit down, strap in, buckle up, clench your cheeks, and put any food down for this one. This is Dr. Leo Stanley, a real sick-son bitch. Born in 1886 to a house of learned doctors, Leo grew up to continue his father's legacy. So in 1913, fresh out of school, gripping his medical degree in his sweaty palm and with little to no surgical experience, Leo became the chief surgeon of the San Quentin prison in, you guessed it, San Quentin, California, the state's oldest prison. Leo's first impressions left much to be desired. The prison was cramped and run down with little to no air circulation, no natural light, and the worst offender of all, according to Leo at least, was the lack of racial segregation. In response, he commissioned a new building, one with fresh air, warm light, and people separated by the color of their skin. Although in a position of responsibility as a healer, Stanley made it very clear that he was the one in charge, leveraging medical attention against bad behavior. Accounts from inmates attest to Leo's apathetic approach to their medical needs. Dwight Myers, who had a reputation as more of a rowdy rascal, had suffered a crushed hand while operating a piece of machinery. Myers was rushed to the medical wing and begged Dr. Stanley for help. Oh fuck! Doctor, we need to get him to surgery. Hell no. Slam him on the table right there, get the bone clipper, and get to work. And thus, Dwight was minus one hand and plus one infection. Without anesthesia, by the way. Convicted criminal and ironic name haver Steve Krim was also known for causing a ruckus on more than one occasion, having been sentenced to solitary confinement multiple times. On one such an occasion, he complained of an agonizing pain in his groinal ball region. Stanley, who didn't give a fickle flying fuck, refused to see Krim. After 3 months in solitary confinement, Krim suffered a brutal ball blast. His scrotum had ruptured. He was sent off to the hospital wing only to be met with indifference from the good doctor. Well, it's too late to treat it now. What are you, nuts? Oh wait, you ain't. Get out of here. You sicken me. Reports of abuse and neglect were prevalent across Stanley's career, but what did he care? He was a medical professional and they were no good scumbag criminals. Well, actually, he did care to some degree. He wanted to figure out what made criminals criminals. You see, Stanley was a proud eugenicist. He was extremely vocal in his beliefs that criminals and other lowly humans should not be allowed to reproduce lest they slop out more human filth like themselves. In fact, during his tenure at San Quentin between 1913 and 1951, Dr. Stanley is known to have performed nearly 1,000 sterilizations, both voluntary and involuntary. He felt verily justified in his actions as he believed he prevented the birth of several would-be criminals. But sterilization was just a band-aid. Dr. Stanley wanted to find the source of the problem. While other researchers at the time subscribed to the Lombrosian theory that pointed to physical characteristics as the reason for criminal behavior, Dr. Leo Stanley proposed another theory, that criminality lies within. Quite literally, Stanley sought to prove that some internal parts of the human body were to blame, that they could be studied to find a commonality across known criminals and differentiate those features from productive members of society. To test this theory, he focused on various endocrine glands found within the body. If you're unaware, an endocrine gland is an organ that excretes different hormones in response to your body's needs. These hormones regulate bodily functions like growth, metabolism, and your mood. Your kidneys, your pancreas, your ovaries, your balls, they're all endocrine glands. He began poking, prodding, and even full-on removing glands from prisoners. Did they consent to the surgery? Maybe. Stanley had claimed multiple times the willingness of his prisoners to be put under the knife. But it was later revealed that most of these prisoners had suicidal and homicidal tendencies, so I believe
there's a lot of people out
Stanley
here.
noted how one troublesome prisoner who,
There's
upon the removal of the majority of his
a lot of people out here doing
experienced a
fucking
night-and-day personality switch from disorderly degenerate
herbalism
to a
too,
calm
which
and
is pissing me
collected
off.
compatriot, following rules and routines and having his aggressions completely vanish. Stanley drew inspiration from the studies of Charles Brown-Séquard, the manic Mauritian physiologist who injected himself and others with a concoction of blood and animal testicles as a means of rejuvenation and reversing the aging process. You know, from my immortality video, that guy.
Did it work?
Despite that research being widely discredited as a bunch of fucking poppycock, Dr. Stanley decided to give it a chance. He conducted multiple experiments involving the removal of testicles of freshly executed prisoners and slapped them bad boys into the sacks of senile old men with the hope of making them less old and certainly less senile. Surprisingly, it worked. Kind of. While it was reported that older men were soon seen bouncing around with the strength and stamina of their younger peers, it was short-lived. Now, his reports also went into copious detail about how long-term flaccid fellas were suddenly pitching tents all over the place and all the implications surrounding that, but yeah, I'm skipping that part. You see, your balls are the main factory of testosterone, the manly hormone. Grows your muscles, your bones, your hair, and makes you want to ram your rod into anything you find remotely attractive. But the supposed
All right, Major, it was
benefits of
good seeing you, brother.
testicle
Take it
transfer
easy.
faded very quickly. But that did not stop the experimentation. Over the course of several years, Stanley continued his ball-swapping surgeries, theorizing that if he discovered the proper procedure, he could bring vitality and sanity back to aging men. Stanley thought that this breakthrough would put him on the forefront of modern medicine, that he could single-handedly rid the world of crime. By 1940, Stanley had performed over 10,000 nut jobs, some of which were donations made from animals. Goats, rams, boars, and deer junk were just slammed in men's sacks. Some of these prisoners even received a mixture of mashed up man parts which were injected into their bellies. It wasn't until 1941 that the prison found some solace. Stanley shipped himself off with the US Navy to serve in World War II as a lieutenant commander. And after the war, Stanley returned to San Quentin with extreme disappointment. In his absence, the California Department of Corrections instead opted for clinical psychology to address underlying issues of criminality. Turns out, if you just ask someone why they are the way they are, sometimes that gets the job done. Who would have guessed? With the continued advance of both medical ethics and the study of endocrinology, fellow doctors started calling Stanley out on his bullshit, disregarding his work as utter insanity. Completely demoralized, Dr. Leo Stanley retired from the San Quentin prison in 1951. He opened up a quiet private practice for some years, but then died in 1976 at the age of 90. The brutal ballbuster had no kids. Pretty rough, huh? Want to learn more about evil human experiments, you sicko? Well, I've got a few more videos on the matter. Here's one of them right over here. Oh yeah, remember to subscribe. I'll see you over there.
Your morbid curiosity got the best of you, didn't it? Alright, well here's even more evil human experiments. Part 3! Usually when you think of World War II, chemical weapons are not the first thing that comes to mind. And that's because almost everyone learned their lesson in World War I. Except Japan, of course, who used them heavily against China. But they would learn two big lessons later on. But on the Western Front, chemical weapons were rarely used for fear of heavy retaliation. However, precautionary measures still had to be taken in the event that they were used. In order to design effective protective equipment, one has to learn what they're dealing with. Enter the mustard gas experiments, secret tests conducted by the United States to gain more insight into the effects of mustard gas on soldiers. Now you might be asking, what about all those soldiers killed during World War I? Well, you'd actually be surprised to learn that out of the estimated 17 million or so deaths attributed to the Great War, only about 90,000 were from chemical weapons, with only a few thousand being directly from mustard gas. And that's only about 1/100th of a percent. That's not really a conclusive sample size. In order to paint a clearer picture of what they were dealing with, over 60,000 soldiers were voluntold to participate in these trials, often with zero knowledge of what they were about to experience. In total, there were 3 experimental designs for troops to partake in. The first, and the easiest, was the patch test. Liquid mustard gas was applied directly to the test subject's skin in order to observe any immediate effects. The second was the field test, where soldiers were deployed on a simulated battlefield and enveloped in a mustard gas cloud to test various protective equipment prototypes. The last design was the chamber test. Equipped with only makeshift gas masks, soldiers were locked in small chambers where mustard gas was piped in order to test its incapacitative properties. One soldier, Sergeant Rollins Edwards, recalls his horrific experience when enduring a chamber test at just 21 years old in 1943.
And it was just one little hut there. And they told us all to go in there, but don't put on your gas mask until you smell gas. And we went in there, and I heard when the latch closed, it had a bar outside the door. This was plywood. And we all standing up in there, but I put my gas mask on right then. Well, the gas mask then was just paper and charcoal. When they put that gas on from up top there, this guy started to scream because it was feel like there was a million red ants over you just all over the whole complete body.
Keep in mind that mustard gas itself, while it can be lethal, had a very low mortality rate in World War I, only around 2 to 3%. Its main purpose was to incapacitate rather than kill. It was great at its job, but it was the British who decided to kick things up a notch with lewisite, a deadlier alternative to mustard gas. This was an arsenic-based compound capable of damaging your DNA on contact. Skin would blister, and your respiratory system would likely fail. But not only were these experiments aimed at observing the health effects on soldiers as a whole, but also how the chemicals may have affected different races. Black, Puerto Rican, Japanese, and white soldiers were tested separately, with the white soldiers being the control group, meaning that they were the baseline to compare to. If there was enough evidence to suggest that one group was more resistant than another, well, guess who's going to be sent on the front line? Of course, in the end, no such conclusive evidence was ever found, so good job with that one. Any soldier resisting participation was threatened with dishonorable discharge and jail time for failure to obey commands. During these experiments, soldiers were subjected to agonizing pain and trauma, which resulted in permanent physical and psychological damage for the rest of their lives. These men were scarred with chemical burns on their skin, their eyes, and even in their lungs. Those who endured these experiments, as well as survived any future combat, because these soldiers were still expected to fight in the war, were unable to seek any medical attention once discharged from service. They were sworn to secrecy, lest they face legal backlash for disclosing information about a confidential operation. While you might be sitting there waving your finger at the United States, know that it wasn't just the wonderful Freedom Powerhouse who did this kind of stuff. The mustard gas experiments actually took place years after the good old Redcoats did the same thing in Australia, England, Canada, and India, which is probably when the British developed their aversion to anything remotely spicy. Now here's a topic that'll probably get me canceled. Way back in the day in 1965, 2 twin baby boys slopped out of their mother. Bruce
See, now
and
they just
Brian
don't tell you
Reimer.
that they're
As cute as
testing
they
shit
were,
on you,
they
they
had a
just
bit
do
of a
it.
problem. Both boys were born with phimosis, an odd medical condition that, in monetizable terms, meant that they had trouble peeing properly due to a non-retractable skin on their little fellas. Well, that's not the worst. I mean, just a simple circumcision would pop those turtles right out of their shell, right? Normally, yes, if you have a decent doctor. A description apparently not befitting of Bruce's doctor. The physician who performed this rather routine surgery decided to be a bit unconventional and cauterize the freshly cut skin rather than a traditional stitching. This deviation from standard procedure rendered Bruce's manhood completely non-functional at just 8 months old.
Jesus.
Outraged, the Reimer parents refused to have Brian undergo the same treatment, so his jacket still had its hood. With Bruce's medically malpracticed member, Reimer's parents eventually found one Dr. John Money, which sounds more like the prim and proper version of Johnny Cash, except Money would be performing a lot more hurt. Dr. John Money was a medical psychology professor at Johns Hopkins University. His research centered on theories of gender identity and gender roles. He would eventually pioneer the process of chemical castration, a drug treatment on sex offenders to completely eliminate their violent desires, which is pretty cool. But what's not cool is his role in the life of Bruce Reimer.
Evil experiments done on humans.
After the Reimer family got in contact with Dr. Money, they were advised to have Bruce's remaining male parts surgically removed and to swap teams, undergoing gender reassignment and instead being raised as a girl. Bewildered, the parents agreed, and at just 2 years old, Bruce Reimer became Brenda Reimer. Although later in life, Bruce stated that he never really identified as female. But Dr. Money didn't stop there. He pushed further and tried to upsell just beyond the base model. Looks like little Brenda's gonna need some hormone treatment, and while you're at it, I can throw in a vagina as well. It'll look like a chewed up wad of gum, but it'll do the trick. We're just gonna take the hormone treatment? Thanks. No one ever wanted a vagina. But this is where things started to really take a turn. You see, Money had a theory, one that explored the influences of nature versus nurture as it pertains to gender identity. He believed that such identities are instilled upon us through our upbringing rather than our biological traits. And this would culminate into one of the most strange and disturbing experiments I've ever read about. So thanks, YouTube comments section. Appreciate that. In what I can only assume would be a way to further his research, both Brenda and Brian regularly visited Dr. Money for routine checkups to see how the change had impacted their relationship and well-being. At just 6 years old, Money began exposing the children to explicit adult content. Even worse, he reportedly forced the two children to reenact certain poses featured in these films and had, at least on one occasion, taken pictures of the children doing this.
So
Both
he's a
children
pedophile.
had reported incidents of Dr. Money's temper when resisting such requests. They stated that although he was calm and well-mannered in the presence of their parents, he became violent and verbally abusive behind closed doors. When discussing the events years later, Brenda recalled one specific event where Dr. Money had yelled at him for refusing to undress when both children were forced to inspect each other. Years later, a now teenage Brenda was propositioned by Money to undergo a full transition surgery, but Brenda repeatedly and adamantly refused. After years of, let's not sugarcoat it, full-blown sexual abuse, Brenda hit a psychological breaking point. It was at this time that the Reimer parents broke the truth to Brenda that he was born as a boy. And immediately, Brenda abandoned life as a girl, took on the name David, and even underwent reconstructive surgeries to restore damage done to him. Dr. Money, however, fraudulently reported his work as a successful female gender development, using it as evidence to support future gender reassignment cases. But in 1997, David came forward with his story to discredit Dr. Money, speaking to the horrors of his upbringing and the mental toll it took on both him and his brother. David's testimony was published across several high-profile magazines, but as freeing as it was to tell his story, it wasn't enough to free him from his mental anguish. In 2004, David had taken his own life at age 38, just 2 years after his brother, Brian, had overdosed on antidepressants. Dr. Money had brushed off David's testimony as merely right-wing and anti-feminist propaganda. According to the Intersex Society of North America, however, many individuals within the intersex community had condemned Money for falsifying his report, as it had led to thousands of surgical procedures done on infants as a matter of policy. Over the following years, Money would continue to have many of his theories debunked by his own social experiments. He never faced any consequences for his explicit actions with the Reimer twins or any other families that he had impacted with his practices. John Money ultimately cashed out of this mortal coil in 2006 at the age of 85. As an added kick to the butchered dick, even though Brian never had the surgery to cure his phimosis, that condition that kickstarted this whole thing, it eventually corrected itself with age. So it is likely that Bruce would have also outgrown this condition, sparing both brothers from their cruel fate. But hey, hindsight's 20/20. It's not real. During the complete shit stain on South African history that was apartheid, there was an infectious disease running rampant through the South American military. Or at least it was thought of as a disease by some. And just like any other disease, there had to be a cure, right? Well, that's what Dr. Aubrey Levin claimed.
Wait a
anyway.
minute, is there a
In
fucking level 70 rogue
1967,
around
the
here
South
killing
African
people?
military began forced conscription of soldiers to beef up the military.
No.
Initially, homosexuality was outright banned in the military, so when joining, soldiers were examined by medical doctors to screen for any suspicious tendencies.
Why are you gay?
Any enlisted soldiers found to be lying about being straight were
I
severely
wanna
punished with
kill
imprisonment,
him just
but
for
in
being
reality,
a rogue,
there was a
but
strong
he's level
concern over the
44.
opposite.
You know what?
It was actually feared that
You know
many
what?
men would lie about their preferences
Fuck
in
it.
order to avoid being conscripted.
Kill him while they're young, you know?
So how goes the conscription? Not good. Apparently everyone around here is gay. What? That's impossible. Is it? So instead, the rules were changed to allow those identifying as
Nah, he ain't. I don't
homosexual
even
to be
want
forced into
that
military
soul
service.
stone.
They just had to be cured as all. So those individuals were sent to a secret military hospital to unwillingly partake in Dr. Levin's many cures. This is where the Aversion Project began. Soldiers, which now found
He
themselves
killed that
amongst
guy,
a
so that's why I
population
killed
of
him.
drug addicts and the severely mentally ill, were strapped into chairs and forced to watch many explicit adult films of the he on him variety. Nice. These patients sustained aggressive electrical shocks while viewing the films, up to 120 volts and about 800 milliamps, which is super painful and potentially lethal. The theory was that if repeatedly shocked, the brain would eventually rewire itself to anticipate pain when thinking of the naughty dude thoughts. You know, a Clockwork Orange style. The tests continued, but Levin failed to get any of the results that he had anticipated. In response, he upped the ante by continuing the aggressive shock therapy in conjunction with deep-throating depressant drugs to make the victims' brains more susceptible to change. Despite this outright torture, the desired effects were never achieved, and no cure had occurred. Although it does have to be said that some soldiers simply faked that they were cured in order to escape these torturous experiments. As a last-ditch effort to stop any
Okay,
of these
270
so-called
now. We're
unnatural
at
desires
270.
from
Where
ever
do we go
occurring
next?
again, Levin had these soldiers chemically castrated against their will
Fellwood.
before being released from the hospital. Now, tragically, this took a huge psychological and physical toll on the victims. Many ended up taking their own lives shortly after release. Dr. Levin went back to the drawing board and came up with one more attempt at a cure. Forced gender reassignment. You see, if you
Is
like
Fel-
dudes
Fel-
and you're
what-
a dude,
what continent
that's
is
just silly,
Felwood
but
on?
If you're now a girl and you still like dudes, well, then it's a-okay. Several soldiers were forced to
Okay.
undergo the surgery.
It's on that
Not
one.
many survived. Those who did suffered extreme medical issues for the rest of their lives. Survivors were given new identities and forbidden from contacting anyone from their old life. But the horror didn't stop there. In order to keep his failed experiments out of the public light, Dr. Levin oversaw the construction of Greifswald, a forced labor camp where any of his subjects that were considered incurable would reside. It wasn't until 1975, 7 years after his initial tests began, that the nightmare finally ended after Dr. Levin received a promotion. He left the military to become the Director of Mental Health for the South African Department of Health Services and Welfare. Of course, justice would never be served. After apartheid ended in 1995, Levin fled to Canada where he lived comfortably as a psychology professor. He was charged in an unrelated crime in 2010 and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, but he was ultimately released just 18 months later on parole. And as of this video, he is 86 years old and still alive today as a free man.
What happens if I try to kill him right there? Or does it say you can't do that
In
in
the midst
town?
of the Cold War, rumors began to spread across the continents of Soviet brainwashing. American prisoners of war released after the Korean War were witnessed to be shadows of the men they once were, often regurgitating communist ideals to which they were apparently subjected to repeatedly during their capture. Some other men outright refused to return to American soil and fully defected to the USSR. Traitors. But these obvious tells of psychological manipulation struck fear into the vacuous heart of the American government. The CIA director at the time, Alan Dulles, condemned such actions, calling out the communist brainwashing as abhorrent and nefarious. He went on to state how
Ear
such war
juice.
tactics were beneath American values and even human values as a whole. So in order to ensure that this would never happen on American soil, Director Dulles, just 3 days after his little speech, approved Project MKUltra, the United States' very own mind control experimentation program. Sure, Dulles may have said that mind control is un-American, but losing is even un-American.
The main goal of MK Ultra was to develop ways to control human behavior and ultimately develop a truth serum, be it a physical substance or a specific technique. This would be especially helpful with things like espionage or interrogating enemy prisoners of war. Hey, it's only evil if the enemy does it. MK Ultra was composed of several different methods for perfecting the art of psychological manipulation. These included hypnosis, electroshock therapy, and administering experimental drugs, the most pervasive of which being the forced administration of LSD. Now, these tactics were not limited to just prisoners of war. Those are way too scarce in numbers. In order to get more promising and conclusive data, you need a larger population. Well, that's nothing a few prisons, psych wards, and the US Army can't supply. Wait, what? The head honcho of MK Ultra was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, one of the CIA's top biochemists. Under his guidance and with generous funding from the CIA, experiments began across North America in over 30 institutions and universities, including Columbia University and Stanford University. Experiments were later expanded to Canada too, but let's start domestically. MK Ultra was set in motion in 1953, where the first candidate for this mythical truth serum was tested, lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD, a powerful synthetic hallucinogen developed in 1938 in Switzerland. I originally wanted to develop a new respiratory stimulant, and I did, but now I can also taste colors. That's pretty cool too. Tons of this stuff was purchased by the CIA for use in MK Ultra, roughly $4.2 million worth in today's money. In true evil experiment fashion, test subjects were never given explicit knowledge of what they were about to experience, only that they would be participating in some sort of test. And these subjects were either convicted criminals or mentally ill patients who either had no choice in participation or the ability to comprehend what they were about to go through. Former organized crime boss guy Whitey Bulger was one such patient, and he wrote about his experience as a government lab rat in 1957. He recalled being injected with what he later found out to be LSD. Here's an excerpt from his writings. 8 convicts in a panic and paranoid state. Total loss of appetite. Hallucinating. The room would change shape. Hours of paranoia and feeling violent. We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares and even blood coming out of the walls. Guys turning into skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change into the head of a dog. I felt like I was going insane. Yeah, it was really rough stuff, and maybe some people in the audience can attest to some experience like this. Let me know in the comments if Bulger's testimony sounds something like you've gone through. You little deviants, you. But wait, there's more. Let's talk about the appropriately named Operation Midnight Climax. This was a rather risque covert operation where several CIA-funded women of the night would lure unsuspecting and rather anxious men into CIA safe houses across California and New York. These men, unfortunately, would only have their minds blown as they were well supplied with drinks laced with LSD. CIA agents would observe these festivities from behind a two-way mirror as these dudes absolutely lost their goddamn minds. Athletic little fella, isn't he? You think that's bad? Well, the Canadians weren't much better. Dr. Donald Cameron developed the concept of psychic driving, a nightmarish experiment aimed at erasing memories and reprogramming the human brain. In addition to the usual LSD administration, Dr. Cameron also performed intense electroshock therapy, often at 30 to 40 times the normal power. Patients were put into drug-induced comas for weeks on end and forced to listen to looping audio.
What is this?
These
Songflower.
patients were often diagnosed with anxiety disorders and postpartum
What is Songflower?
depression. So imagine coming into a hospital, having anxiety and being strapped into a chair, injected with drugs, electrically shocked, and forced to listen to the same audio looping for weeks on end. Needless to say, these victims suffered permanent physiological damage, including complete amnesia and losing the ability to speak. Project MK Ultra came to an abrupt end in 1973 when all of the classified documents were ordered to be destroyed after government-wide panic began following the events of the Watergate incident. You know, when President Nixon's re-election campaign staff were found secretly spying on their political opponents. This sparked a huge public distrust of the government and was a catalyst for many investigations of the government for foul play. Despite the purge of documentation, over 20,000 documents survived, which were subsequently investigated and brought into the public eye a year later.
In 1976, President Ford signed an executive order banning any drug experimentation on human subjects without written and witness-informed consent.
It's a Ford
Dr.
logo on
Gottlieb,
his
who
forehead.
conveniently retired from the CIA in 1973, faced no consequences for his role in MKUltra and ultimately brushed off the project as ineffective and a waste of time. He died peacefully in his home in 1999. Well, that was pretty neat. If you enjoyed this video, remember to do the thing and the stuff. And if you want to learn more about human experiments, be sure to check out part 1 here and part 2 here. I'll see you over there.
How does a highly respected creator go from getting over 1 billion views a year to losing it all the following year? It's simple. Do not.
No. Absolutely not at fault.
Admit.
So for everyone who's mad about that, be angry about it.
Fault.
We are just blaming you. It's about the zero accountability is what makes us so mad.
There's no zero accountability, dude.
Jason Thor Hall grew a small following while proudly acting as the face of his game studio, Pirate Software. While this developed, his indie game Heartbound did not. For nearly a decade, he has been teasing progress on Animus, a single chapter in his 5-chapter game. Progress further stalled when he became something of an online icon. Through his YouTube shorts, Thor would grow rapidly. His viewership increased by 31,000% in November 2023 alone. Here, he would disseminate advice and establish his lore that would pay into his credibility.
Yeah, my last job was hacking power plants for the federal government. I worked for the United States Department of Energy. But no, my dad didn't inspire the WoW guy from South Park. My dad is the WoW guy from South Park. I am a content creator specifically that is a game developer that has worked in this industry for 20 years.
Pirate Software was massive, but not unstoppable. It was in January of 2025 that he, alongside hundreds of content creators, joined in a massive collaborative gaming venture in the MMO World of Warcraft, a game which he not only helped develop, but was also supposedly an expert in. It was his failure here, but more so his failure to admit fault, that unraveled everything.
Straight up, bro, this dude is a complete fraud.
No, that's the issue. This guy's egoistical as...
The internet watched live as a life and tech guru struggled with even the simplest of PR decisions. For months, Pirate would only address the compounding criticisms with unsatisfactory and snap reports. This caused his indie game to lose support, brought a sharp decline in views, and fueled an endless stream of expose videos that had meticulously unearthed his controversial past and discredited every one of his achievements.
I've been called a pet, zoophile, corporate plant, degenerate, narcissist, smoker baby, and many other names. And they attacked all the accomplishments over my life, despite physical evidence to prove to the contrary.
To get the fullest understanding,
What is that?
this video aims to capture all of Pirate Software, from his controversial history to present day. In 1987, Jason Thor Hall was born.
What is that?
And 4 years later, a game studio integral to the story of Thor was founded.
If I can't say no good about someone, then I'll say nothing at all.
Silicon and Synapse, composed of 3 University of California graduates, worked to port video games, essentially translating them to work on other systems.
Have you ever watched SCP explain videos? Yeah, I used to watch those for a while, but I feel like I've already seen all the interesting ones. Why, you have any for me? Like all the well-known SCP ones I've already watched. Like the big fucking snake thing that oozes amnesia fluid in the ocean. The one that's if you look at a picture of it, it will like stop at nothing to kill you.
These are the 14 most powerful people in all of human history. The O5 Council. They call the shots at the SCP Foundation. They'd kill thousands to protect their anonymity, because their power lies in
Anonymity.
accountability to us, the people. Some say they're gods or immortals. Some say they're demons or AIs. Maybe there's a little truth to all that. But after risking it all to hack the Foundation's highest encryption database, I can give you the cold, hard facts. So listen close. We don't have much time. And be warned, you're in danger just for watching this. Good luck. You're going to need it. First, there's the files I scraped on 05-13, also known as the Persian, the Activist, the Meddler, and 10. That's just a handful of the aliases he goes by. 13 is so mysterious that some people think he doesn't actually even exist. He's just the tiebreaker, seeing as in a council of 12 members.
All right, gang, take it easy, brother.
Can't technically get deadlocked on some
See you tomorrow.
decision, right? This whole conspiracy theory says that 05-13 is a role that gets passed around all the other members.
Yeah, I've spent 2 days fucking doing herbalism so far. So hopefully, it'll be worth it pretty
So I
soon.
searched deeper. I got curious about that one nickname, the Meddler. So I decided to take a deeper look. According to all those internal reports, they are 13 is nothing special, nothing anomalous. Just an American male in his mid-30s of European descent. He's known for playing high-ranking members of the Foundation against each other. There's plenty of recorded complaints about him chewing out other council members and calling them incompetent behind their backs. And yet, there haven't been any reported assassination attempts against him. And that really piqued my interest. Assassinations and the O5 Council go hand in hand. So I could tell this was just another cover story, and I went deeper. That's when I really peeled off the mask and found out who 13 really is. This might sound a little crazy, but the 13th member of the O5 Council is Death. That's right, the Grim Reaper, Angkor. The most encrypted files show that sometime in the 1800s, the other members of the O5 Council conducted a ritual to ensnare Death himself, in order to make it so that the ravages of time would never reach them. He's a member of the Council, but also the Council's prisoner. And when I realized that this was the horrifying truth behind the nature of 05-13, it gave me an insight into just how insane the rest of all this was going to get. If you turn back now, they might just give you amnestics when they find you. Keep watching, and you might just hit the point of no return. Still here? Good.
Amnestics.
That means you've got guts.
Where's
Unlike
this shit? It comes from the
05-12,
sea
but
snake thing.
We'll get to that in a sec. These guys have more aliases than you have family members. The accountant, Adam, the train man, the contractor, the physician. Some say he's the normal one of the team, appointed to his position in an emergency after the previous 05-12 got assassinated by the ethics department. They mainly keep him busy with errands, but really he's just meat in the room. That just seemed a little too convenient to me, almost like a smokescreen. So I kept searching, rooting out the truth. One of the leading theories is that 12's real name is Omar Alway, an African mathematical genius that make Einstein, Hawking, and Oppenheimer look like idiots. He got promoted to his position on the O5 Council because the Council was being pound foolish and penny wise, blowing their funds on self-indulgent pet projects to enrich themselves. Does it really surprise you? The O5 Council needed its own personal accountant, and nobody seemed like he'd fit the bill better than Omar. He's a large, dark-skinned man who's only ever seen wearing the finest suits. He's got a drinking problem, but everybody stays quiet about it. Because without him, this whole operation would be insolvent within a year. This all seemed to make sense. I was pouring through the files, and until they brought on the latest 12, it really did seem like the Foundation was having money troubles. He really was Omar Alway, but here's the thing. Omar isn't a big guy in a suit. Not anymore. Ever since an accident, he's been reduced to a sentient brain in a jar, crunching numbers with an inbuilt computer terminal codenamed Cyrus. And if you were hoping that 05-11 would be the exception, you'd be dead wrong. 11's a real mean customer. He's often called by codenames like the Keeper, the Father of Lies, the Recluse, and the Turncloak. He's likely the one who cooked up every lie and misdirect I'm dissecting and deconstructing in this video. That's because he's the Chief Disinformation Officer of the O5 Council. And his dark genius is taking all the little truths about him, splitting them, and surrounding them with lies so nobody will ever notice. It's an ingenious deception, and one he's willing to do awful, awful things to protect. But I don't care if I die, if it means getting to share the real truth. So here's what's true about 05-11.
I like that. I like that a lot.
He was a member of several other groups of interest before defecting to the Foundation, including Marshall Carter and Dark and the Serpent's Hand. Chances are, giving up this information to the Foundation is how he was able to parlay himself into a position of power. Lord knows how they think they can trust him after all the groups he's already betrayed. It might have something to do with the fact he's an incredibly powerful thaumaturge, a sorcerer capable of bending minds to his will, including his fellow council members, it seems. But here is where it gets weird. Not only is all this true, he's also the only member of the O5 Council that you might have already seen. That's because in addition to all this, he's also a sitting United States Senator, one of the more powerful and influential ones, too. The Foundation wanted one of their own in Congress in order to manipulate the direction of the US political system to their own ends. And look at how that's working for all of us. But 11's a pussycat compared to 05-10, the first member of the O5 Council that I think might actually personally kill me for telling you all this. Truth is, you'd rather face off against 10 different mobile task force squads than 05-10. You definitely have a better chance of actually surviving against the squads. Some say that 05-10 is really Thomas Stonewall Jackson, a Confederate general who's living an unnaturally long life thanks to the influence of 05-13. But that's just as insane and wrong as it sounds. It's another classic ruse meant to throw investigators like me off the scent. And maybe if I was a schmuck like all the others, I'd actually fall for it. But no, I kept looking, until I got close. Cover stories was that 10 was a 75-year-old Catholic man, and a direct descendant of the Knights of the Military Order of Bora y Aragon. This gives him plenty of indirect experience with the anomalous thanks to the Order's extensive history of interactions with the strange and seemingly impossible. I'll admit that this one actually almost had me, but there was this itch deep in my brain that told me I was being fooled. I needed to go just a little further to find the real truth, so I did. That's when things got scary, because this was the first member of the O5 Council that I confirmed to be female, which narrowed the truth down to one possible action. 10 is the assassin. She was the Foundation's most effective and terrifying gun for hire. She's taken out everyone from the Zodiac Killer to US President John F. Kennedy, and gotten a little too close to the truth. She became so well versed in the art of murder that she started teaching assassins for the Foundation, and then teaching people to teach assassins for the Foundation. She'd become such an integral part of the Foundation's offensive capabilities that it was impossible to keep her out of the highest rungs of power. She likely assassinated the previous 10th member of the Council, as well as being behind a number of other internal assassinations and the direct training of the Red Right Hand Kill Squad. In other words, if a little laser sight appears on me while I'm telling you all this, it's probably from her rifle. And she might be scary, but things started to get even weirder when it came to 05-9, known by codenames like the Chameleon, the Oracle, the Secret Keeper, and the Lovers. The last one is particularly strange, because it suggests that the position of 9 is actually filled by two different people, a romantically involved duo who take turns being the actual member and the bodyguard of said member. Whether this is out of a sense of security or some weird fetish thing, well, that I can't tell you. But this whole thing ran a little too fanciful for me to begin with anyway. As the Chameleon, it's believed that 9 might just be a totally intangible being at heart, a free-floating soul, a loose consciousness capable of jacking into the bodies of others as a means of living forever, and eternally changing their whole appearance and vibe to avoid detection. See what I mean about the insane lengths they will go to stay hidden? I also found out that 9 is an absolute master of memes, using mimetic subliminal techniques to influence everyone around them to do their bidding. It's a level of personal power that immediately made them a sure thing for a high-ranking position in the O5 Council. The latest avatar of the chameleon seems to be a woman from New Zealand, who's posing as the most normal member of the council, when really she's anything but. For all I know, just revealing all this about her might cause her to switch bodies again and become someone entirely different. It's my worst nightmare that if they catch me, they might even turn my body into the next vessel for this monster. That my very flesh is forever forced to be a part of the thing I've dedicated my life to undermining. That's why I know I'm either going to go down fighting or stay under the radar, because even death is better than that. Though I guess what scares me is, if they did want to go that way, could 13 just bring me back to life so they could use me after all? I don't even want to think about it. What I do want to think about is the true nature of 05-8, whose disinformation takes some of the wildest turns I've ever seen. One of the cover stories that they've made for this member is the Imperative, some unknowable cosmic force that can make anyone do anything with a verbal command. According to the data I scraped, this is apparently how the Foundation pulled off some of its more unethical operations without any complaints from people. I don't buy it. The thing is, if this was true, why would there ever be any infighting or assassinations in the Council? The Imperative would keep them all in line. That's what got me diving deeper into the flames. One of the top candidates for the true identity of 05-8 is Abigail Hadfield, the twin sister of another 05 member, and a former member of the General Assembly of Thaumaturgists and Theologists Against Queen Mab. This was a British-aligned anti-anomaly group of magic users created to oppose Mab, Queen of the Fey Realms, an extremely powerful entity and one of the Foundation's most persistent and
The hell is a golden
enemies.
Sam doing
As
up
a
here?
result, she oversees Foundation research into anomalies involving thaumaturgy and reality warping, thanks to her experience. I've been able to confirm that Abigail Hadfield has been involved with the SCP Foundation, forming a confirmed link between them and the British government. But I don't think for a second that Hadfield is 05-8. No, that's because the true 05-8, Magnolia, has things to hide even beyond her role as a member of the Council. Magnolia is one of the more quiet and stoic members of the Council, because it rests on her to make some of the organization's most brutal and unpopular decisions. This makes her kind of the Council's sin eater. She's a European woman in her mid-50s, capable of changing her appearance at will, and making herself deliberately unattractive as part of her penance for the terrible decisions she's been forced to make, including making the call to nuke multiple Foundation containment sites, killing thousands, in order to stop wider containment breaches. She wears an occult ring made out of human sinew, and some say that she welcomes assassination to relieve the constant waves of guilt. And yet, I feel like you and me are likely to get assassinated long before her. Speaking of assassinations, I immediately knew something was up when I was looking into 05-7. I got this feeling, that kind of acidic dread that curls up at the bottom of your gut like a caustic kundalini. Every intuitive part of my body was screaming, this one is dangerous. And everything I've learned since has done nothing to prove that instinct wrong, including multiple indications that this nasty customer might be a high-ranking member of, if not the literal head, of the Chaos Insurgency, one of the most dangerous groups of interest the SCP Foundation has ever faced. The reports say that he seems to take a particular interest in any anomalous objects that get stolen from the Foundation during Chaos Insurgency raids. It seems, from my research, that he's a highly educated university professor and a major theorist in the field of anomalistic chaos magic. That makes him a major thought leader for the very philosophies that underpin the
That makes him a
Chaos
major
Insurgency
thought.
itself. Using his incredible knowledge, he developed multiple Foundation training programs, particularly psychological prep courses for dealing with the anomalous in person. In a way, he was a key figure in making both the Foundation and the Chaos Insurgency the organizations they are today. But while all this is true, there's an even stranger secret beneath. 7 is not human and never has been. While its stock form appears to be an East Asian man with a vaguely androgynous appearance, it's actually an extraplanar being, a Lovecraftian entity of pure nightmares that just happens to walk among us. It wears jewelry made from the teeth of human beings, and it's unclear what it hopes to gain out of playing a role in the Foundation and the Chaos Insurgency. Maybe it just hopes to increase global chaos in a way that benefits its mysterious larger plans. We still don't know, because even the Foundation doesn't know that much either. And it says a lot about 05-6 when he can still feel larger than life when next to his extra planner entity coworker, which, believe me, is no mean feat, my friend. One of the most cynical and paranoid readings of 6 is that he's a puppet of the Global Occult Coalition, the Foundation's more militant UN equivalent. He was believed to have been planted in the Council relatively early on in the Foundation's development, almost a kind of failsafe that would give the Foundation's most powerful group an inbuilt Achilles heel. But of course, that's just part of the smokescreen. They think they can trick me, don't they? Trick us. Of course, when they try to throw us off, it only encourages me to uncover more. I didn't believe the story that he was some decrepit 200-year-old wretch. His life stretched far beyond what SCP-006, the Fountain of Youth, could ever provide. But he still wasn't dying, not naturally. He was being kept alive by the supernatural intervention of 13. They say he mainly stays in a wheelchair, too physically weak to get things done for himself. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. The true nature of 6 is that he's a man in his 40s nicknamed the American, or the Cowboy, and he's got style to match. Long hair kept in a ponytail underneath a white Stetson, boss of the Plains cowboy hat, wearing a white suit that would make Doug Dimmadome proud.
Yeah,
he was
Doug
once the
Dimmadome.
Foundation's top field agent.
Dimsdale Dimmadome.
That explains why he can swan through the halls of containment sites with that easy swagger, tapping his wolf's head cane as he walks, a bullwhip that's seen 100 cases still hanging from his belt. Because he's so confident in his own ability, he's the least secretive of all the O5 Council members, and the loudest. If you see him walking towards
he's
you,
basically
it'll probably
Indiana
be with
Jones.
his 2 expert bodyguards, known only as Thompson and Black. It seems
Oh,
like
that's
his role in the
racist.
Council is heading Foundation security initiatives and rooting out any potential traitors in their midst. Chances are he knows that we've got this information about him already. I try to be careful, cover my tracks, but there's only so much you can do in the face of the most powerful organization on the planet. They see almost everything. They have eyes everywhere. And all those eyes connect back to the monstrous brain of the O5 Council. And even knowing everything you know now, you still might be surprised by what comes next. O5-5 is not nearly as audacious in presentation as the Cowboy, but that doesn't mean you should ever underestimate them, especially if the information I've hacked from the Foundation mainframe is to be believed. One of the smokescreens offered is that of the individual's codenamed Manifest Destiny, a violent force who believes wholeheartedly in the idea of man's inherent dominion over nature. He's a white American man in his mid-50s who has played an outsized role in slaughtering Native American anomalous communities. Thankfully, while this guy very much does exist, he's not actually on the O5 Council. One of the few saving graces in this whole league.
Oh my god, what is this?
One thing that is true about 5 is that he oversees all the Foundation front businesses, making sure they run properly and have convincing covers. This is an extremely important job, because the Foundation needs funding. The fact that many of their front businesses are legitimately running businesses that makes use of their stolen anomalous technology in order to keep their cash flow solid. As a result, he works closely with O5-12. But of course, there's a twist in the tale, right? And that's even more literal here, because 5 is literally a cat. I'm not sure if he was a cat originally who gained human-level intelligence, or if he was a human first who was then somehow anomalously
He's a
transformed
furry.
into a cat, but managed to retain human-level intelligence. I didn't believe it at first, but the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. One of the Foundation's lead researchers, Dr. Kane Pathos Crow, is a dog, and one of the high-ranking members of the Serpent's Hand is also a cat. It gets more confusing and terrifying the more you think about it. But just in case a feline council member has misled you into thinking they're all sunshine and roses, allow me to direct your attention to O5-4. One of the nastiest of the whole bunch when you read between the lines. And no, I'm not exaggerating. All the misdirections in the data paint him as a much nicer guy than he is, such as saying he's an old member of the Imperial German Anomalous Matters Examination Agency and a veteran of the Fifth Occult War on behalf of the German Empire. It explained why he seems to have such an in-depth knowledge in the zone of Davite and Mechanite battle tactics. But while that last part might at least be true, the whole truth is a hell of a lot nastier than that. One of the most common
So
codenames
fucking
is
green,
the
dude.
Gangster,
Green.
and he's a high-rolling Chaos Insurgency affiliate, back when the Insurgency was still a Foundation Black Ops project connected to the Red Right Hand. But they don't just call him the Gangster because of that. The truth is, 4 has been involved in a laundry list of organized crime and even terrorist groups. He's rubbed elbows with Al Capone and members of the Chicago Spirit, the anomalous crime organization that's
rub my
dominated
elbow.
the American market for crimes of supernatural nature. He's been involved in thousands of killings, both for the Foundation,
it was
within the Foundation,
startled,
and
followed by
outside
anger.
the Foundation, all for business and pleasure. He is a
What?
dangerous man and is roundly distrusted even
What are you
among
doing?
the other members of the council. But his extensive connections to the underbelly of the criminal world makes his information too useful to ever dispense with, even if they could kill the man himself. While 05-3 is thankfully much more benign than 4, he still has a dark past and some menacing connections, which shouldn't be surprising for anyone on the council, should it? He's an elderly Russian,
Oh, no.
likely a former member
I'm
of the
sorry.
Tsar's
I love
Sears
you.
before the collapse of the Russian monarchy and the revolution. Since then, he's traveled the globe.
Oh,
eternally
well,
fascinated
damn,
by
if it
religious
isn't the
and
repercussion of my
ideological cults,
actions.
and gathering vast swaths of information about
Coming in my
methods of
room,
controlling large numbers of
being
people.
loud, knowing
He
you're
even
gonna
has
scare me.
connections to L. Ron
Get
Hubbard,
a reaction,
the creator of Scientology.
and then you're upset at
Still,
the reaction.
despite all this, many consider him the conscience of the council.
Yes, my
the
fault,
voice
right.
of reason, who encourages the more benevolent answer. But he's never the loudest voice in the room, generally bending to the group consensus even if it goes against his morals. That kind of moral and ethical flexibility will take you far in the corrupt edifice of the SCP Foundation. I can also say with complete and utter confidence that 05-2 is either a highly sophisticated artificial intelligence protocol or transgender Jesus. In the case of the former, he's a program created by top Maxwellist mechanites that have unparalleled skill in creating artificial consciousness equal in depth and greater in programming power than real human brains. He's the nerve center of the Foundation's Panopticon global surveillance system, the one that's likely hunting us down right now. In the case of the transgender Jesus theory being true, 2 is a Middle Eastern man designated female at birth, with wounds consistent with surviving the biblical crucifixion, and incredible anomalous powers that one would expect from the transgender Son of God. Under this premise, it's believed that 2 might be a holdover from an erased timeline. But honestly, even trying to reconcile the 2 possible options is making my brain hurt a little. Which brings us to 05-1, the most powerful member of the numerically designated 05 Council. Some of the cover stories on 1 are truly something else, including them being Eve, wife of Adam, the second woman ever created after Lilith. Another claims he's a mummified corpse with a biologically dead brain, kept alive through sheer willpower. But having cut deep below the layers of spin, I've discovered the truth we need to unmask this man. He was born with the second sight, a lifelong sensitivity to the anomalous. That's why he was drafted into a special contingent of Union soldiers in the American Civil War, with the specific purview of combating anomalous threats behind the enemy lines of the heathen South. It was his assignment to raid the Anderson factory, a huge infernal complex run by avowed Satanist Joseph Anderson. After one and his troops raided the place and killed Anderson, they took advantage of his occult tech to form an organization to face down the darkest aspects of the paranormal out there. This group, of course, became the SCP Foundation, corrupted by its own power. This is where most people, most cowards, would stop. But I'm not just interested in the table. I want to take down the one who sits above the table too. The mysterious figure known only as the Administrator. Somehow even more classified than anything else involving the 05 Council. This is above top secret. The Foundation might wipe out an entire city on the off chance that just one of the people in that city had dirt on the Administrator. So when I tell you that I'm talking about positively nuclear secrets, I really mean it. So, who is the Administrator? Here's everything I know, and due to the anomalous nature of even information about the Administrator, sometimes even completely mutually exclusive information can simultaneously be true. One possible name for the Administrator is F. Williams, many Foundation doesn't seem to know what that stands for. A note on his file reads, "We're not even sure what that first initial is short for. We found sources claiming it's Frederick, Francis, Fritz, Friedrich, or Franz. Sometimes the surname's something else, or the names William Fritz, Frederick Williams, or Fritz Willis. But the letters FW keep showing up. There's something here. And that's where I agree. There is something here. We know the administrator has a lifespan impossible for any human, and that every world will fall over themselves to take his call. He was one of the key founding members of the Foundation, possibly dating back to the Stone Age, and is the only person with the authority to select and dismiss members of the O5 Council. His body is made out of a charcoal-esque material, multi-limbed, appearing patently inhuman. This isn't helped by his tendency to wear SCP-262, the coat of many arms, a long trench coat that manifests a bevy of alien limbs to allow the user to manipulate matter around them. Hence, one of his codenames, the Spider. Some claims he comes from a mysterious domain known only as the plane where eyes cannot follow. It is said that he speaks softly but punishes failure with extreme prejudice. His existence is even a part of Serpent's Hand scripture, reading, "An acquaintance of the Serpent prior to the Foundation's creation, and a frequent face in the Wanderer's library, perpetually youthful, optimistic, charismatic, and charming. Creator of novel spellcraft, formed the Foundation alongside O5-1, having been inspired by the Serpent's rejection from heaven. He drinks love so deeply, it's a wonder he hasn't drowned. And maybe we will be the ones who can finally drown him, drown them all. With all this information, we're dangerous to them, you and me. We can use what we know as a weapon, use our brains to do what thousands of anomalies and hundreds of groups of interest couldn't. Working together, we could actually take down the...
Wait, you can't be in here! Get out of here! No, you can't do this! I've got rights! I've got rights!
On behalf of the SCP Foundation,
He
we
got
apologize for the interruption, and we strongly recommend you forget everything you just heard. You'll live longer. Now check out Secret Groups That Runs the World, SCP-05 Council Explained, or the O5 Council Must Die, SCP-001 The Way It Ends, or Borocycle, for more.
Hey, you're watching my official compilation channel, but if you want to see my newest videos as soon as they're uploaded, check out my main channel, Chat History. Alright, enjoy the video. Horrible medical cures. Yep, we're hitting hard and heavy with this one. Back in the day when you had any sorts of pains or bruises, ouches or oozes, you had the freedom to tween off screen to your local drugstore and get yourself a healthy and unrestricted dosage of opium-derived morphine slammed right down your gullet. The obvious problem with having such an addictive substance readily available is, well, people got addicted. So bad, in fact, that towards the end of the 1800s, nearly 1 in 200 people in the United States were suffering from morphine addiction, many of which were injured veterans of that uncivil Civil War that had just ended a few decades prior. The market was in demand for something less addictive while still packing a punch at minimizing pain, and that's where a certain German pharmaceutical company came into play. Bayer, or more commonly pronounced Bayer or Bayer, decided to take a stab in the lab to produce something fab. Now, to his credit, English chemist Charles Romley Alder Wright did the heavy lifting for this research back in 1874, but Bayer would be the one to bring it across the finish line as a medical product. Using morphine itself, German chemist and Bayer employee Felix Hoffmann worked his chemical magic, acetylating the morphine compound into diacetylmorphine. Remember acetylation. That'll be important in a bit. So what does all of that mumbo-jumbo jargon mean? Well, I'll tell you. You see these two acetyl groups right here? They allow for better lipid solubility, meaning that this stuff is able to be absorbed into your bloodstream more quickly than regular morphine, allowing it to take effect that much faster. Early experiments boasted phenomenal results, with patients praising its intense effects. Thus, Felix dubbed his creation heroisch, German for heroic or strong. But in 1898, Bayer would sell the wonder drug under a slightly different name, heroin. The product was advertised as a safer, non-addictive alternative to morphine, with the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal explicitly stating the, quote, absence of danger of acquiring the habit. Well, ain't that just a big bulging ballsack of irony? I say that because morphine was originally introduced to the consumer market under the same premise. It was to be a safer, non-addictive alternative to opium. But instead of actually being safer alternatives, the subsequent products were just more and more potent forms of the same drug with heavier addictive qualities. Crazy, right? So now in the market, the Big H was sold in many forms: tablets, lozenges, elixirs, and of course, syrups. In addition to general pain relief, this syrup was claimed to be a suitable treatment for tuberculosis and pneumonia, which were very common at the time. It was even touted towards children as an effective cough and cold remedy, giving relief to not only sick kids, but their exhausted parents too. Well, he's not coughing anymore, is he? So for years, Bayer was producing and distributing these products worldwide, creating the next generation of addicts. But what Bayer scientists failed to realize was that the human body was actually breaking down the supposed medicine back into its original form. Remember acetylation? Well, through biological deacetylation, the heroin molecules were just being metabolized back into morphine molecules. So in truth, patients were just getting more powerful, faster acting morphine disguised as medicine. As for the innocent consumers, their quality of life was drastically altered from the supposed cure. What? While short-term effects seemed promising, mainly that addictive euphoric feeling, the long-term effects were horrifying. Doctors who prescribed stronger versions of the product reported an overwhelming number of requests to up their dosages, a clear-cut sign of tolerance and addiction. Even if the initial affliction had passed, consumers still demanded their doses. Those unable to be prescribed any additional amounts experienced terrible withdrawal symptoms. These included restlessness, bone and muscle pain, insomnia, nausea, and chills. In the extreme cases, heavy use of the stuff often resulted in complete respiratory failure, which of course means full system shutdown. Due to severe backlash, Bayer put a cap on all heroin production in 1913, coincidentally right before a little thing called the Harrison Narcotics Act was passed into law the following year. This effectively removed any and all diacetylmorphine-based remedies from the shelves, restricting them to only being available via prescription from a licensed medical doctor. It remained prescribable for a bit, but was ultimately banned in 1924. It took until 1970 to be officially recognized as a Schedule I drug under the Controlled Substances Act, determined to have no acceptable medical use, regardless of the initial claims upon release. Mental illness has always been a problem throughout human history, with our knowledge around the subject still evolving to this day. Although research on the topic dates all the way back to ancient times, it wasn't until the mid to late 1800s when things really started to rev up. But like any field of research, the preliminary phase is where all of the majority of the errors are made. You gotta fail a lot to learn from mistakes. Unfortunately though, some mistakes aren't initially recognized as such. Take one Dr. Manfred Sackel. A simple accident on his part was misconstrued as a success, and many inadvertently paid the price for it. Trained as a psychiatrist at the University of Vienna in Austria, you know, the place that isn't Australia, Dr. Sackel skipped across the pond to the US in the late 1920s to tackle the psychological disorder of substance addiction. You know, like morphine addiction. But instead of just prescribing a simple syrup, Dr. Sackel instead used insulin injections. The insulin was used as a metabolic sedative, basically calmed down the achy and shaky addicts, making them super sleepy instead. Much more manageable, but not exactly cured. They'll just get shaky again later. Well, unfortunately, Dr. Sackel must have drunk a tall ice-cold glass of dumb bitch juice one morning, because he accidentally pumped too much insulin into a patient, forcing them to go lights out, induced into a hypoglycemic coma.
Shoot! Don't go dying on me!
He managed to bring the patient back to consciousness through a delicate jab of glucose. But what happened next was actually astonishing. The patient, normally all fidgety and whatnot, showed no visible withdrawal symptoms and even improved mental clarity. It appeared that simply turning the brain off and on again gave the patient a much needed mental reset. Well, one success means it works, said no good doctor ever. With this supposed breakthrough, Dr. Sackel had written up his discovery and decided to go for gold. Now standardizing the process, he tested his new treatment, dubbed insulin shock therapy, on patients with schizophrenia, a severe mental disorder which, at the time, had no treatments whatsoever. Under insulin shock therapy, patients were put through rigorous coma induction and wake cycles. This occurred 5 to 6 times a week, with each coma lasting about an hour before regaining consciousness. This process lasted for multiple weeks, with patients being subjected to as many as 60 comas over the course of a few months. Some worst cases even lasted more than a year. Patients, when they actually had a light on upstairs, often experienced excessive perspiration, salivation, and agitation, with many also experiencing violent convulsions. Despite these very obvious adverse effects, Dr. Sackle published his findings, claiming that up to 70% of patients had full remission, completely cured of their medical condition. This jump-started the craze for doctors to start jump-starting their schizophrenic patients. But the repetitious hypoglycemic comas did little to benefit the body. Long-term effects from insulin shock therapy included severe memory loss, reduced attention span, and slower brain activity. These people had much more difficulty learning or even thinking. On the extreme end, of course, were the deaths. According to institutional clinical data from across the United States, mortality rates from the treatment reached as high as 5% in some facilities. Sure, that doesn't sound like much on paper, but when thousands and thousands of patients were having their brains forcibly rebooted, the numbers add up. Hundreds of unnecessary deaths thanks to shoddy research. Insulin shock therapy continued to be practiced up until the 1950s, where it eventually fell out of favor once antipsychotic medications entered the market. These medications were cheaper and safer for the patient. By the 1960s, the therapy was completely abandoned. As for Dr. Manfred Sackle, his heart abandoned him in 1957 when he died of heart failure at the age of 57. This delicious-looking rock is called calomel, and it's responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths throughout human history.
What?
Although a simple compound,
Like some
calomel,
mythical
also known as
ore.
mercurous chloride, was widely used as a treatment for centuries, with Arabian alchemists first documenting its use back in the medieval times to treat syphilis. But Swiss physician and double chin enthusiast Paracelsus pushed the research further in the 1500s. He noted the compound's astounding ability to rid the human body of black bile. Made you vomit and shit yourself. You see, for millennia, the prevailing medical theory was that of the Hippocratic Four Humors. I know I've discussed this before, but as a refresher, the theory suggested that the human body contains 4 main fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you're healthy, it means that all 4 of these fluids were in equilibrium. But even if one was just slightly off, it could cause you to get sick, so you had to bring things back into balance. You had to let out some blood, cough up a green glob, or learn how to drain your dragon, each a valid method for getting things back in order. Although Paracelsus could see a potential benefit with calomel's purgative properties, he actually advised against it, recommending it only as a last resort. This was because, from what he observed, the risks far outweighed the potential rewards. Even by the 16th century, the problematic nature of mercury as a treatment was already well known. Pure mercury had been used medicinally since the days of old, and the smarter science people had documented its less than desirable effects on the human body. Hair loss, tooth loss, fatigue, dementia, and death were all on the menu from heavy mercury usage, with death most likely being the worst one. But who needs warnings and research when you can make them dollar bills, y'all? Jump forward tens of decades into the 18th and 19th centuries, and American and English physicians were handing out calomel like caramels. Refined calomel is a tasteless, odorless white powder which makes it a perfect oral medication. It remained marketed as a purgative and a potential cure for diseases or conditions such as syphilis, gout, bronchitis, cholera, constipation, or even ingrown toenails. But wouldn't you know it, calomel as a medical treatment wasn't the best idea. The violent bodily expulsions led patients to suffer severe dehydration. Not only that, but some patients were prescribed bloodletting sessions alongside their mercurial cure. So in an attempt to balance their humors, some patients way overcorrected to the point of dangerously low levels of bodily fluids. This resulted in the little shriveled up raisins to suffer what is called hypovolemic shock, meaning that their bodies couldn't provide enough healthy blood to
I think
their
Warhead
organs,
still
leading to
uses
rapid heart
his
rate,
too.
extreme weakness, and complete organ failure. But to some of the most brilliant medical minds at the time, this simply meant that the treatment was working. Scottish fellow William Cullen, a leading medical authority in the 18th century, saw these symptoms simply as, quote, nervous energy leaving the body, which, according to his logic, would eventually lead to a cure of the underlying disease.
Make him feel good.
Any death that had occurred was not the fault of the calomel, but the disease itself. Regardless of his positive thoughts on the matter, he still cautioned excessive use of calomel and only recommended minimal effective doses. After all, like any substance, it is the dose that makes the poison. Well, one Scottish physician wasn't going to discourage the brave heart of this Scottish physician, Benjamin Rush. Not only a successful and world-renowned physician and philosopher at the time, Benny Rush also signed the American Declaration of Independence, so technically, he's a founding father. But that, of course, doesn't absolve him of his mistakes, and there were many. Take, for instance, the use of calomel to treat yellow fever in the 1790s. He took Cullen's recommendation for minimum doses and painted it with one of his own four humors, cranking everything into maximum overdrive. Benjamin Rush instead overprescribed calomel in, quote, heroic doses, combined with excessive bloodletting to put patients through what he called depletion therapy. Can't have any bad fluids in your body if you have none at all. His treatments, if you could even call them that, are estimated to have resulted in thousands and thousands of unnecessary deaths throughout the 18th century. But aside from egotistical doctors, calomel still remained in the medical spotlight. Luckily, its fate would be sealed in the 20th century, just at a terrible cost. Instead of being prescribed outright on its own, calomel began to be used as an ingredient for several consumer products throughout the 1900s. This included cosmetics and baby products, particularly teething powders for fussy babies growing their first set of chompers. The teething powder will be applied directly to the little future taxpayers.
Kai's known me for a long time. He's known me before I started streaming, so
terrible side effect.
any and all of the drama that comes along with you know, building this community, he doesn't give a fuck about, because Kai's just an overall good person.
The death toll from calomel-sourced acridemia
Kai has a good
reached
heart.
as high as 585 from 19.
It's easy to tell the difference between real friends and fake friends, especially when you do drastic drama-filled things like I do. The real friends will be like, dude, what are you doing? Stop that. And then the fake friends will be like, oh, you're the worst, terrible, most shitty person in the world. You should die. I'm leaving. Bye. Yeah. People are kind of easy to read, and especially when you got a little bit of sauce you can throw on top of them. They turn into that low-tier god audio? What? What does that mean?
Esoterium. Please, enjoy a glass of complimentary Kool-Aid.
Yo, Harrod. Thank you for the 2 gifties, brother. What are you doing that for? What is that herb over there? Plague Bloom? I needed that one, damn it. We're at 298, bro. 298 herbalism. I need... And we spent almost an hour here, because if you look at our what's that thing called? Hearthstone. I'm gonna use, oh my god, I'm gonna die. It's okay, we just took half our health. What is this?
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
What the fuck? Oh, I like it. Bro, I'm extra tired today. Probably once I hit 300 herbalism, then I'm gonna Hearthstone back to Shatrath, and then try to see if I can go. See, this Arthas tier isn't gonna give me a level. I should leave it for that other guy who's herbalisming. Yeah, we'll leave it for the other guy. I mean, it could give me a level, but it's like blah. Leave it for that other guy to get. But yeah, I need 2 more herbs, 2 more levels, and go back to Shatrath, and then see if I can find where to train my herbalism above 300, and then probably get off stream, and then tomorrow work on 300 to 375. Oh my god, he started a rare, whoa, this is a rare community train. Reached level 2 to gift emotes to some lucky viewers. How many do we need for level 2? 600 bits or 2 subs remaining. I can do 2 subs. Hold on. Bro, can you get the fuck off me?
Thank you for graciously sponsoring a new patient's treatment.
There you go. Now everybody gets shit. Yeah.
Thank you for graciously sponsoring a new patient's treatment.
Rock Stronghorn at Thrallmar. He is in the big tower up the hill.
Thank you for
So it's
graciously sponsoring our patients in the Esoterium. Please enjoy a glass of complimentary Kool-Aid.
yeah, it's in the same place as the whatchamacallit, the apothecary trainer, right? Because I've already, yeah, see, I've already unlocked 300 to 375 alchemy. So it's the same place. I know where it's at then. Just need 2 more. Give me 2 more herbs. Give me 2 herbases. I just need 2 more herbases. Oh, okay, what is this over here? An Arthas tier. I don't need tiers, dude. Tiers? I don't feel like a tier is gonna give me a level. I mean, it's green, so I guess that means it could still give me a level. Let's see. Yep, just like I thought. No level. Fuck you, Arthas tier. You're a fucking cuck. That's what you are. You fucking... Yeah, I hope you cry, Arthas. Those things do sell for like a gold, though. Yeah, we're gonna experience them together. Y'all gonna be there when we pop my raid cherry. Alright. Grom's blood. Okay. Now I just need one more. Wait, what is that over there? Oh, a dream foil? Oh, we get that dream foil, then that's 300 right there. Look at it. Look at it. Hey, 300 herbalism. We are 300 herbalism, 300 alchemy now. We big boys. Now we go to Shetrath. And then back to Thrallmar. And then we learn the herbalism 375, and then we done for the day. I'm gonna go make some food and relax. I think that guy just died. Did that guy just die? Oh, he almost did. Three-hour stream only, L streamer. Listen, Linda, when was the last time you strum, huh?
Each day
come at me, I'll come at you.
Remember.
Why'd you downgrade the old CPU? What the fuck? How'd it crack? Brother, how the fuck did you crack your card? Screen went black, went to check on the card, and it was cracked along the slots. Through trying to see if it was my doing or something else. Could get returns. What? Did you not? You have it horizontally, do you have it horizontally mounted? I had to think of words for a second. Do I want pictures? Yeah, throw them in the, throw them in the IRL section of Discord. Should we have a setup section? A lot of people like showing off their setups. Let's see. Master Alchemy Trainer. Master Herbalism Trainer. Train me. Train.
Be careful.
What is it? Remember.
Alright, there we go. Look at that. Look at that. Let's see. 300 to 375. Oh, hell yeah. So I can do it here. Nice. First 15 points in Hellfire Peninsula until you can pick up Dreaming Glory. Okay. Nice. See, and now we're at a good spot. 300 herbalism, 300 alchemy. So like I can like naturally progress while doing stuff. Forgiving ESO for what? What did I do? I always do wrong shit. I always piss people off. I always fuck shit up. What am I being forgiven for? I try to figure out. Well, hey, Snuggly, how are you? Like, I'm tired as fuck, brother. Are you about to, like, what do you mean about to? Should I just raid into Kai, or are you going to be live in the next 60 seconds? But we're not speaking, we're typing. Well, you're typing, I'm speaking. Bro, who wants me to ship my heart rate monitor strapped to them? It has such a unique smell. It smells like a combination of like sour, me, and yeah, it just smells like a combination of it's a sour esoteric smell. It's great.